A compilation of the best science fiction stories of the week. Part 1. They say the most valuable treasure of humankind lies between a man's legs. She came to verify that, and nearly got herself killed. The Nexus station pulsed like a beating heart at the edge of interstellar civilization. A warren of glowing corridors, shifting languages, and deals whispered over drinks that tasted of rust and starlight. In the southern wing, past the freighter bays and merchant decks, a bar known simply as the Core buzzed with life, the kind of place where credits changed hands as easily as lies. Kayla Taranese sat alone at the far end of the counter, her purple skin catching the flickering neon like polished amethyst. She stirred her drink without looking up, senses spread like a net across the room. Laughter rose, bodies moved, but her attention honed in on one man. Elias Ward. He stood tall among his delegation, a clean-cut human security officer, late 20s at most. Sun-warmed skin, sandy hair a little unkempt, eyes sharp and watchful. Even in casual dress, he moved with military precision, like he was scanning for snipers between sips of cheap synthehol. Kayla smirked. Most humans she'd met were eager, impulsive, easy to read. Elias? He moved like he knew someone was watching. She adjusted her posture, crossed one leg over the other, tilted her head just enough to let the light kiss the edge of her jawline. Then she stood, glass in hand, and made her approach. First time on Nexus? She asked, her voice velvet over ice. Elias turned. For a second, just a flicker, his eyes widened just enough to confirm what she already knew. Her appearance was exotic even by galactic standards. Luminous turquoise eyes, long silver-laced braids, curves like deliberate sculpture wrapped in tight tactical fabric. That obvious, he said, flashing a half-smile. You have the look of someone trying not to be impressed, she replied. It's charming. He chuckled, nodding to the bartender for a refill. And you? Larathai, right? What brings you to a station full of smugglers and corporate scum? She leaned against the counter beside him. Cultural consulting. I help newcomers not accidentally insult 10 species in 5 minutes. That sounds made up. It pays well. They traded words like fencing partners. Kayla kept the tone light. Her touch measured the occasional brush of her fingers on his forearm, the carefully timed laugh. But he didn't lean in. Didn't mirror her movements. And when she offered to toast, he eyed her glass and said, I don't drink from strangers. Kayla froze for a breath. Then smiled. Smart. Occupational hazard. I read faces for a living. He took a careful sip from his own bottle instead. Her plan frayed around the edges. The sedative-laced drink sat untouched in her hand. She'd expected a simpler mark. One seduction, one sample, one payday. But Elias Ward wasn't playing by the usual rules. So, he said, turning slightly to face her. You really came all the way to Nexus just to help diplomats avoid hand gestures that start wars. Kayla opened her mouth, closed it, then shrugged. Some contracts are stranger than others. Right. He studied her with a gaze that felt like a scan. Then, casually, you know, you don't move like a consultant. She blinked. No. You move like someone waiting for a target to drop their guard. A silence hung between them. A hum of neon, clinking glasses, and a sudden awareness that this man, this human, had seen more than she intended. Then he leaned in, not close, just enough. You're not a cultural consultant, are you? So tell me, what exactly did you come here for? She hated hesitation. It made things messy, slow, dangerous. But as she lay in her bunk that night, eyes open in the dark, Kayla Taranese realized one thing: she had hesitated. And now, the mission was already off script. Elias Ward had seen through her at least partly. The questions, the tone, the calculated distance he kept. He hadn't swallowed her story, not completely. That made him a problem. But also, something else. She rolled onto her side, staring at the wall's soft pulse of ambient light. Her wrist device blinked one unread message. She ignored it. Instead, she pulled up Elias's dossier again. Former planetary security, high marks in behavioral threat analysis, promoted quickly, 0 infractions. Loyal. Observant. The kind of man who followed rules, unless he had a reason not to. She needed a new approach. The next morning, she found him on the observation deck, standing alone near the edge of the glass dome that overlooked the starfield. He didn't turn when she approached, only said, "Still not drinking anything you offer?" She smirked. "That's fair. I'm here unarmed." Relatively. He glanced sideways. "That's supposed to make me feel safer?" "No," she said, stepping up beside him. "Just makes me feel honest." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the slow rotation of distant galaxies beyond the glass. Then she spoke, her tone lighter. "Back on Lareth, my people say that every lie must contain at least one truth. Otherwise, it won't stick. That's supposed to be a confession. More of a cultural insight. I am Larethai, after all." He turned to face her fully. "So what truth was in yours?" She let the silence stretch. "Then, I've studied humans. Not extensively, but enough to know you're unpredictable. Curious. Fragile in all the wrong ways and resilient in ways that terrify my kind. I'm interested in that. I want to understand it better." Elias tilted his head. "That actually sounds like a real answer." "Maybe it is." He studied her, but the suspicion hadn't vanished. It just settled deeper. Later, over synth coffee in a quieter lounge, their conversation turned toward culture. Kayla leaned into her cover story, weaving half-truths and invented customs about Larethai society: neural bonding ceremonies, sound-based memory archives, rites of scent exchange. Elias listened, amused, sometimes skeptical. "You're good at this," he said at one point. "At what?" "Telling stories." She smiled. "You think I'm lying?" "I think you're not telling the whole truth. But you believe parts of it. That's what makes it work." That same night, she received a transmission. Private. Encrypted. From a contact within the underworld network of Nexus Station. Her contact's voice trembled slightly in the audio-only message. The Genesis initiative isn't just collecting. They are synthesizing, using the samples to engineer a sterility vector. Human males. Delayed effect compound. You weren't supposed to know. Ilridge lied to you. You deliver that sample, and you help wipe them out. Her stomach dropped. This was no longer a matter of questionable ethics or buyer anonymity. This was biological warfare. Preemptive sterilization. A slow genocide that left no scars. She sat frozen in the dark, the message repeating in her mind. The vial in her pack felt heavier now. Not a paycheck. A weapon. Was Elias just a target? A mark? Or was he something else? The next morning, Elias found her first. He approached while she was seated in a quiet corner of the lower promenade, sipping something bitter she didn't really taste. "You look different," he said. "Worse. Quieter. That's not usually good." She gave him a look. He held her gaze. "I've been asking around," he said. "Dangerous habit. 2 of my team reported odd interactions with women they don't remember clearly. 1 even blacked out for hours. No clear memory of what happened." Kayla said nothing. "That's the pattern, isn't it? You or someone like you gets close, extracts something, and vanishes." She exhaled slowly. "Sounds like a conspiracy theory. Or a security report in progress. Depends on the outcome." She looked down. Her fingers were curled tight around her cup. He noticed. And then he asked, quietly, "If you're not here to hurt me, why do you always hide your hands when we talk?" The lights in her room were dim, golden with a flicker of artificial warmth, casting long, soft shadows across the floor. Kayla stood near the bed, unzipping the outer layer of her suit, moving slowly, deliberately, like someone navigating a ritual she no longer trusted. Elias sat on the edge of the low bed, elbows on his knees, watching her. His shirt was unbuttoned, his hair slightly mussed, his face unreadable. There was silence between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged. Fragile. The kind of silence that could shatter into 1,000 truths if anyone dared to speak first. She finally did. "You know, I didn't expect you to come." Elias looked up, eyes steady. "Neither did I." She crossed the room, her movements no longer calculated but hesitant in a way that surprised even her. Sitting beside him, she let her shoulder brush his. Not bait. Not manipulation. Just contact. "You're not like most humans I've met," she murmured. "You say that like it's a good thing." "I don't know what it is." They said that way for a while. Quiet. Breathing in sync. His hand found hers, fingers brushing knuckles, not gripping. An invitation, not a demand. She turned her palm to meet his. And for the first time since she'd arrived on Nexus, Kayla Taranese allowed herself to feel instead of calculate. Later, with the lights dimmed further and warmth lingering on skin, she watched him sleep. His face was relaxed, free of the constant vigilance he wore in public. She should have felt triumph. The mission, technically, was complete. She hadn't used sedatives. No coercion. Elias had come to her willingly. But her chest was tight. Not with satisfaction. With something else. She rose silently, walked to the table across the room, and picked up the small collection unit. Thumbprint access, active and humming. It blinked green. She hated the sound it made. Sliding open the sample chamber, she locked the seal. The vial filled slowly, glowing faintly with the fluid that had brought her across sectors. The treasure. The commodity. The weapon. She turned toward the bed. Elias was awake. Sitting up. Watching. Her breath caught. He didn't yell. Didn't rush her. He just spoke, low and sharp. What the hell is that? Kayla froze. Elias. Answer me. She closed the chamber. Turned fully. Held the unit in both hands. It's a sample collector. Biogenetic extraction. His jaw clenched. You took that from me? I didn't drug you. You came willingly. I didn't consent to being harvested. His voice cracked the air like a whip. Kayla took a step forward. I wasn't going to hurt you. You already did. He stood. Taller than she remembered. Shadows cut across his face. You think because I said yes to being with you that it meant yes to that? You think that's how we work? I didn't. If you really wanted to understand humans, he snapped, then know this, we call that rape by deception. Kayla recoiled. The word hit her like a blade. I didn't mean for it to happen like that. I wasn't supposed to care. He looked at her, disgust and pain etched in every line of his face. That's supposed to make it better? She shook her head, throat tight. You were a mission. That's how it started. I didn't know it would feel like this. He didn't reply. The silence this time wasn't charged. It was hollow. Final. Kayla placed a device on the table. Her hands trembled as she pulled her coat over her shoulders. The sample, still sealed, blinked from the tabletop. She didn't take it. At the door, she turned one last time. Elias hadn't moved. I broke protocol. I lied. But I didn't fake what happened between us. He didn't even look up. She left. And for the first time since taking a contract, Kayla Taranese walked away without completing it. Not because she failed. Because she couldn't live with succeeding. The message came at dawn cycle, silent and urgent. A red icon pulsed on Kayla's wrist device as she sat in the shadow of a transit column, her coat pulled tight against the artificial chill of the station. She knew who it was before she read it. Deliver the sample. Immediately. Genesis had what they needed except Elias. Her sample was the final key. She stared at the message for a long time, then deleted it. She needed answers. Dorn was easy enough to find if you knew where not to look. The Tilaxan infobroker slithered out from behind a stack of broken crates in the subdocks, translucent skin flickering with unease. You're late, he rasped through a translator unit. And your glowing panic. I need intel on Genesis, she said. His membranes flickered. That'll cost you. She threw him a chip. double the usual rate. They are not just collecting samples, he said. They are refining a dispersible bioagent. Gas form. Sterilization compound. Targets human Y chromosome expressions. Temporary, maybe. Maybe not. No one's tested it long enough. Kayla felt her stomach twist. Mass distribution. One station, one missed cycle. Boom. Generation lost. She left without a word. Elias found her first. She didn't expect it. He stood in the corridor outside her quarters, hands in his jacket pockets, jaw tight. Their eyes met. Neither moved. "You still have it?" he asked. Kayla nodded. He exhaled. "You planning to hand it over?" "No." Something eased behind his eyes, just a flicker. "Then we need to move. Fast." They didn't talk about the night. Or the betrayal. They didn't apologize. There wasn't time. He showed her a report. 2 human officers missing. Both last seen entering unauthorized zones. Rumors of memory gaps. No investigation filed. They put the pieces together fast. A stolen access badge. A hijacked maintenance path. A blind spot in station cameras. The Genesis data hub was buried in a secured module near the lower reactors, shielded, encrypted, and guarded by drones. They moved like old partners. Elias cleared the perimeter, disabling the proximity alerts. Kayla sliced the biometric locks, her fingers steady. They slipped inside. Holograms flickered to life across the dark room. Genetic maps, test data, projection models. She accessed the archives, decrypted the core. What they found was worse than either expected. Video logs of unwilling extract ions. Test subjects restrained. Field agents with orders to seduce, drug, replicate. Projected impact. 98% sterility among active male humans within 5 years. Elias swore under his breath. Kayla uploaded the files to a hard link node. "Can you transmit this?" "From the diplomatic channel," he said. Encrypted line. "It'll reach Earth, the Galactic Council, and press outlets all at once." They turned to leave. The lights snapped on. At the doorway stood Ulrich, flanked by 2 armed guards in matte black armor. His robe shimmered, and his face wore no surprise. "Disappointing, Mr. Unease," he said. Elias raised his weapon. Kayla didn't move. "We had a contract." "You lied about what the sample was for?" "Details," Ulrich said with a shrug. "This is bigger than your little romance. Bigger than one human." He stepped closer. The guards raised their weapons. "You could have had wealth. Obscurity. Now you're a liability." Elias cocked the weapon. "Back off." Ulrich ignored him. His gaze stayed on Kayla. "You think you can fall in love with one of them and save them all?" he asked. "You might love a human. But 1,000 species? They won't?" He smiled coldly. "And when the council sees what we're building, it won't matter if your hands are clean. It'll already be in the air." Blaster fire lit the corridor like stuttering lightning. The hum of energy weapons echoed off the steel walls, pulsing with chaos. Kayla moved first, sliding across the floor, kicking one of the guards' legs out from under him while Elias opened fire in short, controlled bursts. 2 Genesis soldiers fell. The third ducked behind a console, returning fire. Elias took cover beside a column, Kayla rolling beside him. Her breath came fast. His face was streaked with smoke and sweat. "They are not stalling," he muttered. "They are trying to hold us until backup arrives." Kayla nodded once, then stood. Before Elias could stop her, she stepped into the open, raised the vial Ulrich had wanted so badly and crushed it in her fist. The glass shattered. The sample, glowing faintly, splashed down her forearm and onto the floor. Ulrich watched from the end of the corridor, his expression unreadable. "You're insane," he said. "No," Kayla replied. "I'm free." Elias fired another shot, catching the last guard in the leg. He dropped. The hallway fell silent, filled only with the sound of shorting sparks and shallow breathing. "Transmission's out," Elias said, checking his pad. "It's done." Kayla nodded. She didn't look at him. "Not yet." Moments later, the unmistakable hiss of station clamps unlocking echoed through the hall. Blue armored peacekeepers of the Galactic Council swept in, weapons drawn, insignias glowing. Ulrich raised his hands, sneering. "You fools," he muttered. "You think they'll protect you now? The rest of the initiative will." A stun bolt caught him in the chest before he could finish. He dropped like a stone. The other Genesis operatives surrendered without resistance. One by one, they were dragged away. Kayla stood in the wreckage, hand still bleeding from the shattered vial. Elias looked at her, silent, and said nothing. She had destroyed the only proof of her original betrayal. And that, maybe, was what saved her. Weeks later, the sun over Earth was softer than she remembered. She stood in a quiet office overlooking a grassy quad, her new uniform unfamiliar against her skin. Not tight like armor. Loose. Civilian. She was still adjusting. The knock on her door was light. Familiar. She didn't turn. "Come in." Elias stepped inside, holding a slim data pad. He looked like he'd just stepped off a shuttle boot's dusty jacket unzipped. The same calm in his eyes. The same weight. "They cleared you," he said. Kayla exhaled. Surprised. "No. You made your choice. It counted." He handed her the pad. On the screen was a formal document, a diplomatic offer. Advisory position. Interspecies ethics. Oversight on xenobiological research involving human DNA. "They want you to help build the rules," Elias said. She stared at the screen, then laughed softly. "I used to steal this stuff, you know. Biological code. Now you want me to police it." Elias shrugged. "Call it poetic justice. Or just justice." She turned to him fully. Her face was calmer now. "No masks. I was a thief, Elias. I sold essence, samples, genome strands. I didn't care who bought them. Now they want me to draw the line between science and genocide. He stepped closer. You've already drawn it. In blood. Yours. And mine. They stood close again. Like before. But not the same. You sure this isn't just some Terran guild trip diplomacy? Maybe, Elias said. Or maybe we need someone who knows how far it can go. Who's been to that edge? Kayla stared down at the screen. Then smiled. You humans. Always turning enemies into employees. He grinned. Better than turning them into statistics. She touched the pad, accepted the offer. Then looked back at him. I used to steal the essence of humanity. Now I'm being asked to protect it. He tilted his head. Are you complaining? No, I think. I'm finally where I'm supposed to be. Outside the window, the sun climbed higher. Somewhere in orbit, the wreckage of Genesis still floated. Evidence. History. Warning. But down here, in this quiet office, a former thief and a former target had just rewritten their future. Together. She was surrounded by monsters, and he, a complete stranger, jumped into the pit to save her. But what neither of them knew was this: the real danger wasn't the creatures out there. It was what waited for them beneath the ground. Ash rained down from the sky like the remains of something ancient burning out. The atmosphere of Darien 9 always had that taste: iron, smoke, and silence. Carola crouched low beside a shattered sensor pod, her boots sinking slightly into the black dust that coated the crater floor. Her long ears twitched at the faint hum of energy dying from the machine's ruined core. She tapped the side of her visor. No signal. Just static. She was alone. The crater yawned in every direction, a bowl of molten scars and twisted metal. Down there, something had swallowed the last ping from her crew. And she'd followed it like a shadow chasing a whisper. You're not dead. Not yet, she muttered to herself, voice muffled by the mask. Then louder, as if defiance could keep the ghosts at bay, so keep moving. She stepped over a collapsed beam, blade drawn, plasma slinger strapped tight to her hip. The terrain here had teeth-sharp ridges, sudden shifts, heat tremors that came and went like the breath of a sleeping god. Her scanner gave one final beep. Then died. Carola sighed. Of course. That's when the ground moved. Not a quake. Not quite. A ripple beneath the ash. She froze. Listened. Then she heard it. A rasp. A skitter. Then a screech. They burst from the cracks like nightmares shaken loose from the planet's bones, multi-limbed, glistening, eyes like wet shards of obsidian. She didn't wait. Carola ran. The first beast lunged and caught only the hem of her cloak. The second crashed into a rusted girder, shrieking. She slid down a bank of gravel, drawing her blade in one clean motion. Heart pounding. Breath short. Back pressed against a fallen pod. All right, she hissed, eyes locked on the circling shadows. Come on, then. They came. Fast. Too many. Carola slashed, ducked, turned. One creature hissed as her blade cut across its face, but it didn't fall. They didn't stop. She moved purely on instinct now, body driven by training, by fear, by the stubborn fire that refused to let her die here. Then she slipped. Her foot gave on the soot-slick stone. A claw flashed toward her head. A blur slammed into the beast mid-air. The creature screeched. Then silence. A silver-blue arc lit the air. One clean slice. The monster fell in two twitching halves. Someone stood over her. He was panting. Armor scorched, cracked. Not legendary. Human. His helmet hissed as it unlocked, revealing a face streaked with dirt and blood, eyes sharp with adrenaline and something else, something ancient and alive. "You all right?" he asked. Carola blinked. "Who the hell are you?" "Name's Ree," he said, raising his blade again. "Was just out for a walk." "Your apocalypse sort of ruined the mood." She stared at him, disbelieving. Then more screeches. "No time." "Behind that crawler," she barked. They ran. Together. Not speaking. Not yet. They dove inside just as another creature slammed into the hatch behind them. Reed grabbed a steel rod and jammed it into place. The door held. For now. He collapsed against the wall, breath ragged. Carola stood, tense, blade still drawn. "What the hell are you doing here?" He looked up. Smirked. "Saving you, apparently." "I didn't need saving." "Sure. And I didn't need to fight lava lizards with 10 eyes today. Guess we're both disappointed." She frowned. Studied him. He was covered in soot, gear barely holding together. But he moved like someone used to chaos. Like someone who didn't plan on dying unless it was interesting. "You have a ship?" she asked. He chuckled. Had. May have exploded. Bad landing. Or good crash, depending on perspective. Carola lowered her weapon, just slightly. "You're insane." Reed grinned. "People keep saying that. Maybe there's something to it." Silence fell, broken only by the faint thumps of creatures outside, sniffing, scratching. "So," he said after a moment, "you got a plan, or are we just going to wait here and die together in awkward silence?" She leaned against the wall, exhaling slowly. Her gaze drifted to the locked hatch, then back to him. "What do you know about old Earth tech?" His eyes narrowed. "Enough to know it's usually trouble." "Why?" "Because," Carola said quietly, "whatever killed my crew wasn't one of those things out there." He didn't speak. She looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time since she lost the signal, Carola felt something shift. Not safety. Not trust. But the start of something neither of them could name yet. He nodded slowly. "All right then. Let's see how deep this hole goes." And in the cold dark of Darien 9, the two strangers prepared to descend together. Inside the darkened crawler, time moved like oil. Thick. Slow. The walls creaked under the strain of age, metal groaning with each shift of heat or quake. Carola sat cross-legged on the floor, her blade beside her, helmet off, sweat drying on her temple. Across from her, Ree dug into his pack with the casual confidence of someone who's survived disasters often enough to be unimpressed by them. He tossed her a ration bar. It's mostly edible, I think. She caught it, suspicious. What's in it? Hope and disappointment. Mostly disappointment. She took a bite anyway. They sat in silence. The kind that didn't feel awkward, just unfamiliar. The kind that waits for one of them to say something true. You're human, Carola finally said. Rhea looked up from taping a gash on his forearm. Last time I checked. Your kind started this, she added, voice flat. He didn't flinch. Probably. We're good at that. She stared at him. That doesn't bother you? It should. Maybe it does. But not more than this hole in my arm right now. He flexed his fingers, winced. Pain's more immediate than guilt. She leaned back, eyeing him with the kind of caution usually reserved for wild predators. You don't act like a soldier. I don't act like anything, Rhea replied. That's my charm. He smiled, but there was a crack in it. A small fracture only visible if you watched long enough. Carola shifted. How many wars have you lived through? Enough to know how they end. And yet you saved me? You looked like you could use a hand. Or a sword. I didn't need help. Sure, he said, not unkindly. But you didn't stop me. She looked down at her hands. Dirt under her nails. Dried blood near her wrist. She didn't have a comeback for that. The crawler hummed softly around them. Emergency lights blinked red like a fading heartbeat. You know this isn't over, she said. Whatever we saw out there, it wasn't the root. Nope. Just the weeds. She pulled out her wrist pad, activated the NAV scan. The projection lit the space between them in fractured green light. Rhea leaned closer, elbows on his knees. What are we looking at? Mapping core shows an artificial structure below us. Not recent. Old. Pre-Exodus era, maybe older. He whistled low. So we found a buried nightmare? She nodded. And something inside hijacked our systems. That's what brought me here. That's what killed them. Rhea was quiet for a moment. Then, why go deeper? Why not run? She looked up at him, jaw tight. Because someone might still be alive. Because someone has to stop it. Right, he said. Then added, softer, and because you don't want to be alone with it. She blinked. Once. But didn't deny it. He leaned back against the wall. All right. Let's go find your ghost. Carola raised an eyebrow. You're coming. Not like I have better plans. Besides, if you walk into a death tunnel alone, who'll be here to say I told you so when it collapses on you? She snorted. Almost a laugh. You're reckless. I get bored easily. They packed in silence. Rhea rechecked his plasma blade, muttered something to it like it was an old pet. Carola loaded coordinates into her pad, watching his movements when he wasn't looking. He wasn't like the stories. Human warriors were supposed to be cruel, efficient, merciless. But this one was broken in quiet ways, patched together with sarcasm and stubbornness. As they stood at the crawler door, Carola paused. "You don't even know me?" "Sure I do. You're the one who keeps glaring at me like I ate your rations. You don't have to follow." "Maybe not," Ree said. "But maybe today, I'm not here to ruin a planet. Maybe today, I just ruin your loneliness." She turned away quickly. But the corners of her mouth betrayed her. They opened the hatch and stepped into the dark together. She was surrounded by monsters, and he, a complete stranger, jumped into the pit to save her. But what neither of them knew was this: the real danger wasn't the creatures out there. It was what waited for them beneath the ground. The descent was silent. Not because they had nothing to say, but because every sound felt like it would echo forever in the underground gloom. Carola led the way, her eyes adjusting to the dim pulses of emergency light flickering along corroded walls. The tunnel spiraled down in uneven arcs, carved through layers of mineral and metal older than most civilizations. Behind her, Reed kept up. Noisy, but aware. His plasma blade hung loose at his side, fingers occasionally tapping the hilt like a nervous tick. He hummed softly at one point an old tune, probably nonsense. Carola didn't ask. She liked the sound more than she thought she would. "This place wasn't built for comfort," he muttered, ducking under a low beam. "It wasn't built to be found," she replied. Eventually, the corridor opened into a chamber. Wide. Cold. Silent. In the center, a terminal. Dead. Covered in dust. Carola approached, brushing away sediment with her glove. Symbols flickered faintly beneath her fingers. Ancient Earth Standard. Blocky. Industrial. "Looks like someone wanted to bury a secret in style," Ree said, stepping beside her. She didn't respond. Her focus narrowed. Fingers flying across her pad as she tried to coax life back into the system. No power. Yet. Ree wandered the room, poking at things he probably shouldn't. He found a control box with wires hanging like dead vines. Pulled out a tool that didn't quite match its purpose and got to work. "You know what you're doing?" Carola asked without looking up. "Nope," he said cheerfully. "But sometimes if you pretend hard enough, the universe believes you." She smirked. It was barely there. But it was real. He noticed. Didn't say anything. The lights flickered. A slow hum built up around them as backup power reactivated. Carola stepped back from the console. The wall to their left rumbled. A seam split down the middle, revealing a chamber sealed behind reinforced glass and centuries of dust. Inside, suspended in a glowing field, tangled in cables and fluid, was something neither of them had words for. Part machine. Part organic. Humanoid in shape, but wrong in all the details. Too many joints. Skin where there shouldn't be. Metal where nerves should run. Ree exhaled. "You've found your nightmare?" Carola stared. "This isn't just a weapon. It's a prototype. A hybrid. Built by humans." She hesitated. Then nodded. "Our tech was compromised. Our system drawn here by something we couldn't identify. It hijacked the signal. It wanted us to find it. Reed took a step closer to the glass. The thing inside didn't move, but the fluid around it pulsed. Like breath. Why would something do that? Carola didn't answer. Instead, she moved to the interface beside the stasis field. A glowing panel blinked to life. Diagnostics. Power readings. Status, dormant. She reached out. Wait, Ree said. Are you sure that's a good idea? She paused. I need to know what it knows. And I need you to not get possessed by an ancient robot ghost. She glanced at him. That half smile again. I'll try. Her fingers brushed the surface of the console. A soft chime. Then, movement. The fluid bubbled. The cables twitched. Inside the pod, the creature's eyes snapped open. Red. Burning. Alive. The room dimmed. Systems whined. The stasis field sparked. Carola staggered back. Ree caught her arm. What did you do? I woke it. I didn't mean to, but it responded. It recognized my access code. The hybrid inside thrashed once. Alarms screamed. Ree drew his blade. Plasma ignited with a low hum. Tell me we can shut it down. Carola scrambled to the interface. Her fingers flew. I need time. He nodded. Time I can buy? She looked at him. Just for a moment. Don't die, all right. He winked. If you give me a reason to live, I might reconsider. Then he turned to face the monster. And smiled. She was surrounded by monsters, and he, a complete stranger, jumped into the pit to save her. But what neither of them knew was this: the real danger wasn't the creatures out there. It was what waited for them beneath the ground. The stasis field shattered. With a sound like metal screaming in agony, the hybrid entity lunged forward, its limbs unfolding too far, too fast. Sparks rained from overhead conduits. The chamber darkened, then flared red as emergency systems struggled to contain a power surge that hadn't been expected in centuries. The creature landed between them and the main console, and its head snapped toward Carola. Reed didn't wait. He moved with violent precision, plasma blade lighting the air in a brilliant arc. It met metal, screamed against it, then bit deep. The creature screeched. One of its arms detached, black fluid spraying like oil into the dust. But it barely staggered. It swung another limb, a blade of bone and alloy, straight at Ree's chest. He ducked just in time. The impact shattered the floor beside him. Carola. She was already at the backup console, yanking open a side panel. Her wrist pad synced with the system and began rooting a manual override. Her fingers moved faster than she thought they could. Power reroutes. Cooling controls. Emergency sealant lines. She needed 60 seconds. Maybe less. Behind her, Ree fought like a man who had decided death was only inconvenient if it came before he was done. His blade sang. He vaulted over the collapsed stasis ring, landed hard, drove the blade into the creature's spine. Sparks burst. The thing screamed again, a distorted, animalistic sound. Buy me time, she shouted. That's the plan, he yelled back. The creature retaliated. Tentacles of braided wires launched from its back, slamming into the walls, lifting debris as shields. One wrapped around Ree's leg and yanked. He hit the ground, hard. Carola turned, just in time to see the thing looming over him, its head splitting open to reveal rows of shifting needles. No. She launched forward, her blade drawn, slicing the tentacle in one motion. The severed cable sparked and recoiled. She dropped beside Ree, dragging him back. Stay down. Not how I do things, he growled, coughing. Well, maybe try it once. For me. He blinked at her, blood in his teeth, but managed a smile. If this is the last thing I hear from you, I want it to be that. Then he stood again. Bleeding. Bruised. But standing. I said buy me time, she shouted. And I'm buying in bulk. The fight blurred. Reed threw a grenade that lit up the room with deafening force. The hybrid reeled, momentarily stunned. Carola finished rerouting the final power cycle and slammed her hand against the activation glyph. A deep rumble shook the floor. Blue light pulsed from the walls. Containment relays began to lock in sequence. 1, 2, 3. The hybrid shrieked as it sensed what was happening. It turned, lunged at her. Ree stepped into its path. Blade raised. No hesitation. The impact flung him across the room. He hit the wall. Slid down. Didn't move. The creature reached for Carola, just as the final containment ring surged to life. A pulse of energy blasted outward, freezing it in mid-motion. The stasis field reignited with a shriek of feedback. The hybrid screamed one last time, then went still. Locked in time. Silence fell. Carola dropped to her knees. Her chest rose and fell like she'd been drowning. Across the room, Ree lay motionless. She ran to him. Ree. No response. She touched his shoulder. Warm. She shook him. Ree, damn it, don't you dare. He groaned. Then, that was a terrible idea. She exhaled. Not a breath. A collapse of every nerve. You idiot. You're welcome. She wrapped her arms around him. Tight. Without thinking. He didn't hug back at first. Then slowly, one arm raised, pulling her in. They sat like that, in the ruins, the hybrid trapped again behind its glass coffin. Blood smeared his fingers. Her armor was cracked. The lights flickered overhead. I've lived my whole life not trusting anyone, she said, voice quiet. Not even my own people. He leaned his forehead to hers. She didn't stop him. But I trust you. Even with blood on your hands. Even when you dive headfirst into monsters like a madman. He smiled. We all need a hobby. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I choose you. Here. Now. Not because I should. Because I want to. He laughed. A rough sound. Then winced. That hurt. Only everything. Good. You're alive. He looked at her, more serious now. So what now? She turned toward the frozen monster. Now we find out who else built one of these. That sounds like another bad idea. She helped him stand. You in? He grinned through blood and soot. Always. She was surrounded by monsters, and he, a complete stranger, jumped into the pit to save her. But what neither of them knew was this: the real danger wasn't the creatures out there. It was what waited for them beneath the ground. The rescue team arrived just before the second quake. The sound of their ship was low and sharp, a distant howl slicing through the stillness. Carola stood near the crater rim, one arm around Ree, who leaned heavily against her, trying not to limp too obviously. Their signal beacon pulsed faint blue, guiding the vessel in. The stars above had faded into the early amber of Darien 9's morning light, which bled through the dust like a bruise that hadn't healed. The ship landed without ceremony. Doors hissed open. They stepped out in armor sleek, dark, high-collared, marked with the silver sigil of the Elendary High Order. Their leader approached first, a tall figure with pale skin traced with luminous lines, hair woven in traditional coils, eyes sharp with authority. Carola, she said flatly, stopping a few feet away. We received your signal. Carola nodded. We found the source. And we contained it. The woman looked at Ree. Her gaze lingered. And this is human, one of the squad muttered behind her. The word fell like something distasteful. Carola stepped forward, placing herself slightly between them. This is Ree, she said firmly. He saved my life. More than once. I wouldn't be standing here if not for him. There was silence. Waited. The squad exchanged glances. A flicker of disapproval, of discomfort. The Elendary did not have a history of trusting humans. And their reasons weren't without cause. Ree cleared his throat. Hi. I'm the one bleeding on your crater. Sorry about the mess. No one laughed. Carola let out a breath. He's not the enemy. He's my ally. My choice. The leader studied her for a long moment. Then nodded once. Then he comes with us. Ree blinked. Wasn't expecting that to work. They boarded in silence. The ship lifted from the ground, leaving the crater behind. Through the viewport, Carola watched the ground shrink away, the scars, the wreckage, the monster sealed in steel and silence. It was over. For now. In the medbay, Ree sat shirtless on the edge of a cot, covered in gauze and bioskin patches. Carola stood nearby, arms folded, silent. A medic offered him a stim for the pain. He refused. I'm fine. Just bruised in interesting places. You always talk this much when you're almost dead? Only when I like the company? She smirked. A real one this time. He looked at her, quieter now. So, what happens next? She hesitated. Then walked over, sat beside him. We debrief. We archive what we found. And then? I don't know. You go home. She looked at him. I don't know where that is anymore. He nodded. Didn't push. You could come with us, she said, almost too quickly. He turned. What? She looked down at her hands, then back at him. You don't have to go back to wherever you came from. I mean, if you don't want to. He was quiet for a beat, then smiled. Not teasing, not sarcastic. If you need someone to annoy you every morning and make bad jokes during near-death moments, I'm in. Her hand brushed his. He didn't pull away. Later, under the stars bleeding past the medbay dome, they sat side by side. No more battle. No alarms. Just silence. Her head leaned against his shoulder. Their hands rested between them, fingers barely touching. She looked at him. I used to think you were a nuisance. He smiled without looking. Still am. She turned a little more toward him. Yeah. But now you're my nuisance. He let out a low laugh, then reached up to run a hand through his hair. You know what this is, right? She raised an eyebrow. This is the part where the human and the alien fall for each other and start something really stupid. She smiled. Soft. Knowing. Then let's be stupid together. Outside the window, the stars shimmered like they were holding their breath. And for the first time since the descent into Darien 9, neither of them felt alone. Maybe death wasn't as terrifying as loving the wrong creature, the kind the whole galaxy once labeled as cursed. The moment Rain Maddox crashed onto Thorn, he was already thinking about food. Not survival protocol. Not distress signals. Not even the fact that his oxygen levels were dropping faster than his pulse. No, just food. That tells you a lot about a man. Or maybe it tells you everything about crash landings. They always come when you haven't had lunch. He didn't even see the blast coming. 1 second his survey shuttle was on autopilot above the outer rim, logging radiation traces. The next, a blinding burst of blue-green light tore through his console, lit up the cabin like a fireworks show from hell, and sent him spiraling down toward a planet that on every map had been circled in red and labeled, "Do not approach." Thorn. A planet soaked in legend, ghost stories, and a kill-on-sight advisory that made it the Bermuda Triangle of the Quadrant. Abandoned colonies. Mutated life forms. No verified survivors. Rain always figured that was the kind of hype the Terran government liked to slap on anything they couldn't control. Now, as branches the size of shuttle wings tore past his cockpit and impact alarms howled in his ears, he was starting to suspect it wasn't just hype. The crash was more like a crunch. Metal screaming. Trees snapping. Then, everything went black. He came to with a pounding headache, blood crusted above his right brow, and a piece of something, hopefully bark, not bone, jammed into his side. The smell hit him first, something pungent and oddly sweet, like rotting fruit and copper. Then the heat, wet, suffocating, and alive. He blinked against the pulsing shadows. The forest wasn't quiet. It breathed. Plants pulsed in and out with slow, deliberate rhythm. Vines twitched. A tree nearby shifted like it was stretching in its sleep. Thorn wasn't just alive, it was watching. He tried to move. Bad idea. Pain flared up his leg and he collapsed back with a curse. Okay. So, broken leg. At least one rib fractured. Helmet missing. Emergency comms? fried. The wrist display blinked red with mockery. Perfect. That's when he saw her. At first, he thought she was part of the forest. Standing too still, too quiet. Tall. Lithe. Barefoot. Her skin shimmered like liquid jade under the filtered light, and her long white hair drifted in the humidity like it had a mind of its own. No armor. No weapons. Just presence. Her eyes, if you could call them that, were silver orbs with no pupils, glowing faintly. They fixed on him with curiosity, but not the gentle kind. The kind you see in predators who haven't decided whether you're worth eating yet. Rain swallowed. Hey, he rasped, lifting a trembling hand. You friendly? Or just here to watch me die with style? She didn't answer. Just tilted her head. Then, with terrifying calm, she stepped closer, knelt beside him, and laid 2 fingers against his temple. The world blinked. Pain dulled. The burning in his side faded. A warmth not just physical but deeper, molecular spread through him. Her fingers glowed faintly, and Rain caught a whiff of ozone and starlight. Whoa, he murmured. That's either alien first aid, or a prelude to digestion. Still no response. She touched his leg, and something popped painfully, but then the ache ebbed into a numb throb. Rain gritted his teeth. Okay. Not a hallucination. Definitely not a hallucination. After a few minutes, she stood, took 3 steps back, and vanished into the foliage as silently as she came. Not a word. Not a sound. Leaving him more confused than comforted. He lay back, staring up at a sky half covered in bioluminescent canopy, and exhaled. What the hell was that? She had saved him. He was pretty sure of that. But why? Something told him it wasn't compassion. There was calculation in her eyes. As if she'd been expecting him. And that was somehow worse than being left to die. Rain closed his eyes. He had to rest. To think. To plan. But even as sleep pulled at him, one thought refused to leave. She was beautiful. Otherworldly. Dangerous. And absolutely the last thing he should be thinking about on a death planet like Thorn. But maybe, just maybe, death wasn't the worst fate here. Maybe it was what came after. Loving the cursed. Rain Maddox woke to the sound of dripping. Soft, rhythmic. Not water. Thicker. Slower. Like something bleeding out of stone. He opened his eyes to darkness that wasn't complete. Dim blue light pulsed faintly from the walls around him, stone, but laced with translucent vines that throbbed with a low bioluminescence. He was in a cave. Or something pretending to be one. Organic cables snaked through the rock like arteries. Some pulsed. Some twitched. None of them looked especially thrilled about sharing space with a human. His back ached. His ribs still throbbed, though the sharp edge of the pain had dulled. The leg was splinted, crudely but effectively. And someone had wrapped his side in a soft, flexible bandage that smelled like moss and static electricity. So, not dead. Yet. He sat up slowly, groaning. The space around him was strange. Not quite natural, not quite constructed. a blend of biology and design that made his brain itch. And then he saw her again. She sat cross-legged on a raised stone platform, just outside the reach of the faint glowing vines. Watching him. Same jade green skin. Same silver eyes, glowing with that eerie inner light. Same white hair, now tied loosely at the base of her neck, like she'd bothered to groom herself while he was unconscious. Because priorities. Hey, he said softly, raising a hand. So? Still not gonna talk, huh? Nothing. Not a twitch. Not even a smirk. She just stared. Calm. Assessing. Like a cat watching a bug decide if it wants to fly into the fan. Rain rubbed the back of his neck. I mean, don't get me wrong, I appreciate the rescue. The cave. The moss bandages. But I gotta admit, it's hard to trust someone who looks like a goddess and acts like a murder drone. Still nothing. He looked around, spotting a half-hollowed fruit-like pod beside him. Inside was a viscous blue liquid. It smelled like mint and battery acid. His stomach growled. Is that for me? Or is it bait? She tilted her head, just slightly. Cool. So we're doing charades. Got it. He sipped it. It burned. Then fizzed. Then cooled. Surprisingly good, if you like your meals with a side of mild electrical current. He nodded to her. Thanks. She blinked slowly. Minutes passed. Then, without a word, she stood and walked toward the edge of the cave. A section of the wall parted like petals, revealing a narrow passage overgrown with vines. She looked back at him. Not with impatience. More like invitation. Rain sighed. Right. Because staying here alone on a murder planet would be too easy. He got up. Hobbled after her. The passage led into a marsh. The light dimmed. Air thickened. Sound warped, muffled and distant, like being underwater. Every leaf glistened. Every shadow moved a little too much. She moved ahead of him like a whisper. Effortless. Almost floating. Rain, on the other hand, limped like a guy with 1.5 good legs and zero idea what the hell he was doing. Then they heard it. A squelch. A slow, sucking splash. Something moving through the water that wasn't them. Syra froze. So did Rain. The sound came again closer. She turned to him, held up her hand. Flat. Still. Stay. He nodded. She moved silently into the mist. 1 step. 2. Rain crouched behind a large, gnarled root, heart hammering. The water around them rippled, faint but insistent. Then he saw it. A creature. Slithering. Hulking. A mass of wet, glistening tendrils, like someone had set a swamp on fire and then taught it how to crawl. It had no face. Just a round, gaping maw filled with teeth that spiraled inward like a nightmare blender. It moved toward Syra. She waited. Closer. Then, with a movement so fast Rain barely registered it, she leapt twisting midair, landing atop the thing's back. Her hand glowed. She slammed it down. The creature shrieked. It reared. She held on, digging her fingers into its pulsing hide. And then Rain did the dumbest, bravest thing he could think of. He grabbed a shard of stone and threw it. Hard. It hit the beast's flank. Just enough to draw attention. Just enough to piss it off. The creature spun, flinging Syra off. She landed hard but rolled to her feet with a grace Rain couldn't dream of. It lunged toward him now. Yep, he muttered. Knew that was dumb. He braced. But Syra was faster. She darted between them, eyes blazing, hands glowing brighter now, pure white light laced with crackling arcs. She thrust both palms forward. The blast knocked the creature back 10 meters. It hissed, twitched, then finally stopped moving. Silence fell. Rain stared at her, breathless. Okay, he whispered. Maybe you don't talk. But damn, you say plenty. She didn't smile. But her eyes softened. Just a little. And in that moment, he realized something else. She didn't save him because she had to. She stayed because she wanted to. They entered the forest like people walking into a memory they hadn't lived yet. Rain didn't know the name of the place. But he could feel it. The moment his boot touched the mossy floor, something shifted. The air thickened not just with moisture, but with weight. Emotion. A sense of being watched, and listened to. Syra glanced back at him once, eyes glowing dimly. No words. No gestures. Just a look that said, keep your mind quiet. The trees here weren't like the others. Their trunks were wide, gnarled, and webbed with root systems that didn't just stay underground. They rose, snaked along the surface, curved up the sides of other trees, and pulsed faintly with a soft violet glow. Rain reached out to touch one. Mistake. A shock, not of pain, but memory hit him like a wave. He gasped, stumbling back, heart thudding. He was 12 again. On Earth. Sitting in the back of a rusted transport van, staring out at the endless junk fields near Marsport. His mother's voice soft, tired, whispering, "You're meant for more than scrap runs, Rain." He blinked. The vision faded. Syra stood still nearby, hands clenched. Her breathing had changed, sharper, erratic. Her eyes locked on something Rain couldn't see. She stepped forward, touched a root, and crumpled to her knees. Her body trembled. Lips parted in a silent scream. Rain rushed forward and hesitated. The vines around her glowed brighter, almost eager. He crouched beside her, careful not to touch the roots again. "Syra," he whispered. "Hey. You in there?" She gasped. Her hands clutched the earth. And then he saw it. Not through his eyes. Through hers. A flood of images hit him. Fire raining from the sky. Great cities, organic and shimmering, burning to ash. The screams of 1,000 voices echoing through a crystalline chamber. Her people. Tall, beautiful, glowing with the same strange energy that lived in her now. Dying. One by one. And in the center of it all, Syra, a child, curled in a shattered transport pod, watching her mother disintegrate into light. Rain fell backward, gasping. His head throbbed. His chest ached not from injury, but from grief that wasn't his. What the hell, he breathed. That wasn't mine. She stood slowly, shaking. Her eyes were wide now, flickering. And for the first time, Rain saw fear in them, not of danger, but of him. Was that you? He asked. Did you show me that? She didn't answer. Just turned and started walking. He followed. The forest thickened. The light dimmed. The trees whispered. Rain heard laughter. Not Cyrus. His own. From a lifetime ago. He passed a tree that looked exactly like the one he climbed as a kid. Then a rock that shouldn't be there until he realized it was shaped like the memorial stone from his unit on Terra 6. This place didn't remember the world. It remembered him. He didn't ask how. They came to a clearing. Vines formed a loose circle, writhing like snakes asleep. In the center stood a massive, bulbous growth like a tumor made of stone and bark. It pulsed. Cyrus stepped forward. And the mass moved. From its underside, limbs unfolded. 6. Then 8. Then too many. Eyes opened, dozens blinking wetly. A mouth unsealed like a fruit splitting open. Rows of spiral teeth. Rain froze. Oh no. Nope. I know a boss fight when I see one. The creature screeched. Syra raised one hand. The glow returned, but not like before. It was brighter. Fiercer. Her entire arm lit up, pulsing from shoulder to fingertip with a blinding white gold energy. She stepped forward. Rain grabbed her wrist. Wait. You don't have to. She turned, eyes locking with his. And he heard it. A voice. In his head. Not a word. A feeling. A message. Clear. This is mine to end. He let go. She moved like lightning. The vines recoiled. The beast lunged. She met it head on, slamming her glowing hand into its core. It shrieked a sound so loud it cracked the air and writhed, convulsed, and collapsed into itself. Dead. The light in her arm faded. She staggered. Rain caught her. She didn't resist. Just breathed. Deep. Shaky. Okay, he said softly. You win. You're terrifying and amazing and also maybe slightly radioactive. She looked up at him. This time, a smile. Small. Real. And he felt it again. That link. Not thoughts. Not speech. Just connection. It was starting to scare him. And maybe, just maybe, that's how he knew it was real. The storm came without warning. One moment the forest hummed with eerie calm. The next, a magnetic pulse tore through the air like a living scream. Trees bent unnaturally. The ground quaked. Vines coiled tight around anything metal, and the sky above split in arcs of violet lightning. Syra didn't flinch. She just grabbed Rain's wrist and pulled. They ran. Or rather she ran, and he stumbled behind like a sack of limbs held together with sarcasm and adrenaline. The wind howled. Electromagnetic surges fried his wrist with a pathetic puff of smoke. Sparks danced in his hair. His leg burned. They dove into a shattered dome half swallowed by the earth-old metal, cracked glass, and synthetic roots grown in through the ceiling like veins through bone. A station. Pre-war. Long dead. But not empty. Flickers of power still echoed in the walls. Holograms blinked in and out like ghosts. Monitors pulsed weakly. The door sealed behind them with a hiss and a thud. Safe. For now. Rain collapsed onto the floor, panting. I'm starting to think your planet hates visitors. Cyril looked at him, then at her arm. Blood. A deep gash along her forearm, glowing faintly at the edges. He crawled over, grabbing a half-torn medpack from his belt. Let me help. She hesitated. Then nodded. The silence was full of static and breath. He cleaned the wound as gently as he could, dabbing with sterilizer, watching her jaw twitch as she fought not to react. Her skin was warm. Not like human warmth, more like the warmth of something alive in a way deeper than biology. I used to patch up my unit, he muttered. Except they were loud, drunk, and usually bleeding from bar fights. Syra glanced at him. Her lips curled slightly. Almost a smile. He threaded a thin synthetic suture through a field needle. This might sting. She didn't flinch as he worked. Just kept watching him, her eyes tracing his face like she was reading something not written in words. After a while, he said, that memory you showed me. The burning cities. The screams. That was your home. She nodded. Your family. Another nod. Then, finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Raspy, musical. Veillery. He stopped stitching. Looked up. Your veillery. She met his gaze. Was. Once. He sat back slowly. I thought your people were all gone. Lost in the bio-bombing. They are. Something about the way she said it simple, final made the silence sharper. I was meant to die with them, she said. My father sent me away. Said the line must live. But the line means nothing now. Rain let the words sit between them. The hum of broken machinery filled the space. He didn't speak again until the last stitch was in. There. Not bad, for a guy who failed med school twice. She looked at the wound, then at him. Thank you. He blinked. You do talk. Her smile was sad. Only when it matters. They sat like that for a while. Rain on the floor, Syra beside him, Storm screaming against the reinforced dome above. Something shifted. Maybe it was the way her shoulder leaned just slightly toward his. Or the way their knees almost touched. Or the quiet rhythm of two hearts beating in sync. He looked at her. She looked back. He leaned in slowly, gently, as if waiting for the world to object. She didn't pull away. Their lips brushed. Brief. Electric. And then. An alarm. A shrill, rising tone from one of the wall panels. The hologram above it flickered to life, showing a blip. Moving. Fast. Toward them. Rain pulled back, heart racing. Well, he said. Romance is dead. Cyril was already standing, eyes scanning the display. He followed. What is it? She didn't answer immediately. Her face hardened. Hunting signal. Tracking us. Great, Rain muttered. Of course it is. We kiss once and suddenly it's open season. She looked at him, and despite the tension, her expression softened. Next time, she said, we don't stop. Rain smiled quick and crooked. Deal. The entrance to the lower level wasn't hidden, just forgotten. A cracked panel near the back of the old station flickered when Syra passed her hand across it. Symbols lit up. Not in Terran standard, but in Velarese script, elegant, looping characters that pulsed like veins beneath skin. She didn't hesitate. Just pressed her palm flat. The floor shuddered. Then split open. Rain stared. Okay, that's new. A staircase uncoiled beneath them, formed from stone and old alloy, spiraling downward into a black shaft that breathed cold air. Syra glanced back once. Her face unreadable. But her steps were steady. Rain followed. Because of course he did. The descent was long. The air grew colder, denser. The walls were covered in moss and fiber optic roots, glittering like stars trapped in vines. Somewhere deep beneath them, machinery hummed a resonance that wasn't just heard, but felt, like bones remembering something they'd rather not. At the bottom, the path opened into a chamber. Not a lab. A tomb. The ceiling was high and arched, made of fused obsidian and bone metal. Cylindrical tanks lined the walls, broken and blackened. Inside, remnants of something that had once been alive. Some were still shaped like people. Velarese. Syra froze. She walked slowly now. Reverently. Past the ruined pods, past skeletal frames of experimentation, twisted limbs, fused spines, traces of light still lingering in the bones. Rain felt a chill settle in his chest. This was a research site. No, Syra whispered. It was a slaughterhouse. At the center of the room was a sphere. Floating. Black at its core, ringed with shifting runes and a halo of slow-turning light. It pulsed in time with Rain's heartbeat. Or maybe his heartbeat had fallen in time with it. He couldn't tell. Syra stepped forward. The sphere flared. A voice, not sound, but thought, filled the room. Syra's body trembled. Her breath hitched. Rain stepped closer, instincts screaming. What is that? A relic, Syra said, her voice hollow. The last mind fragment of the Velarese elders. Stored in quantum stasis. It remembers everything. The voice said. Rain's hands curled into fists. Sleeper? What sleeper? The chamber dimmed. The air thickened. Syra swayed. Rain looked at her. Contain what? Her eyes met his and they weren't hers anymore. Not entirely. They glowed brighter than before. Swirling. Alive. Something they made, she said softly. Something they feared. The relic pulsed again. Images shot into Rain's head of a being made of shifting light and hunger, unbound by time, capable of devouring ecosystems and rewriting DNA like language. A living apocalypse. And inside it, Cyrus' face. Younger. Innocent. Watching. I don't. Rain backed away. You're saying, it's in you? Cyril looked down. Not all of it. Not yet. But the seal is weakening. Rain's throat tightened. You knew. She nodded. For how long? Since before I met you? He laughed. It came out bitter. Great. So I've been camping with a time bomb. She didn't flinch. You were never in danger. Tell that to the death sphere. The relic pulsed again. Rain stared at it. Then at her. His voice cracked. What do we do? Cyrus stepped forward, gently took his hand. We run. For how long? Her smile was small. Tragic. Until there's nowhere left to hide. The dropships came at dusk. Not subtle. Not silent. They tore through the sky like falling knives, engines howling, lights flaring, wind slicing through the jungle canopy. Rain and Cyrus saw them before they heard them, dark blots against a burning sky. Cyrus stiffened. Rain stepped forward. Terran markings. Military grade. He exhaled. Relief. Or something like it. Rescue. For half a second, it felt like the universe remembered he existed. The first soldier to emerge was tall, armored, and already annoyed. A long scar ran down his cheek like someone had once tried to erase his face and gave up halfway. Rain Maddox, he barked. Rain nodded slowly. Depends who's asking. The man didn't smile. Just signaled to the others. A squad fanned out behind him. Weapons ready. You're lucky. We tracked your crash. Came to extract you. Rain's eyes flicked to Syra. She hadn't moved. Not an inch. She comes to. The scarred man looked at Syra, then back at Rain. She's not human. She's with me. A pause. Then a nod. Fine. Too easy. They walked together toward the evac ship. Cyrus silent. Rain uneasy. The ship's ramp opened. Bright interior. Too sterile. Too quiet. Then he saw it. In the corner. A containment field already activated. And a sedative injector waiting beside it. He stopped. What's that? Scarface didn't blink. Protocol. She's not coming aboard conscious. She's not dangerous. He laughed once. Cold. Everything on this rock is dangerous. Cyrus stepped back. Just slightly. Rain moved in front of her. You want to help me, fine. But you're not taking her like cargo. Weapons lifted. You're not in command here, Maddox. Stand down. Cyril whispered. Let them. He turned. What? If it gets you off this world. No. Her eyes were calm. It's okay. He looked at her. Then back at them. He stepped aside. They moved in fast. Too fast. She didn't resist. Not when they cuffed her. Not when they jabbed the needle in. Not when her knees buckled and she collapsed like a fallen star. Rain stood frozen. Mouth dry. Hands clenched. They carried her into the ship. He followed, silent, until he heard it. A whisper. Not sound. Thought. Run. Then he saw the monitor. The logs. The crew notes. Subject extraction, priority alpha. Corpse acceptable. Brain must remain intact. His blood went cold. He didn't think. He acted. Elbow to the closest soldier's throat. Grab. Twist. Disarm. Blaster in hand. Alarms flaring. Screams. He ran. Through smoke and sparks, he reached the containment bay. 2 soldiers were prepping her for deep freeze. Not anymore. 3 shots. 1 warning. 2 permanent. He lifted her. She was light. Too light. Her eyes fluttered. Half conscious. Why? She whispered. He held her closer. Because I'm not losing you. Rain began to fall as they burst out of the ship. The jungle was alive again, howling, shifting. The Terrans followed. But they weren't the only predators. The storm called the others. From the trees, creatures emerged, fangs and tendrils, bone plates glistening. Ancient things. Born of the same madness that birthed the planet itself. The soldiers fired. The creatures screamed. Chaos. Rain ran. Syra woke in his arms. Just enough. She reached out, energy crackled at her fingertips. A wall of light erupted behind them, halting the advance. Temporary. He ducked under roots, leapt over ruins, slid through mud. Until they reached the cliffs. The drop below was a river. Savage. Deep. He looked at her. Trust me. She smiled weakly. Always. They jumped. The sky burned above. The forest screamed below. But in that fall, they were together. And that was enough to survive another day. They didn't fall far. The river caught them barely. Cold and wild and deeper than it had any right to be. Rain remembered flashes. Foam. Rocks. Syra's limp hand still clutched in his. Then darkness. They woke on a bank of black sand. The jungle above was still screaming, but more distant now. They had floated far too far for the Terrans to follow. Syra stirred first. Eyes glassy. Distant. Her skin shimmered with a light Rain hadn't seen before. Not warm. Not familiar. Wrong. He crawled to her, soaked and shaking. Syra, he whispered. Hey. You with me? She sat up. Didn't answer. Didn't blink. Then she stood. Her feet barely touched the ground. Her body lifted slightly, gravity second-guessing itself. The air around her thickened. A pulse of pressure rippled out from her chest, bending the trees. Her eyes opened wide. And they weren't hers anymore. Brilliant white and gold, swirling like twin galaxies. Her voice echoed in tones layered on top of each other. The seal is undone. Rain stood, heart hammering. Syra, stop. This isn't you. She looked at him but through him. Not hate. Not love. Just absence. The jungle answered her call. A creature burst from the foliage 20 feet tall, a horror of bone and sinew, glowing with the same light as her. It didn't roar. It didn't breathe. It simply existed. And moved toward them. Syra raised one hand. The beast obeyed. Rain stepped forward. Not to run. Not to fight. To speak. I know you're in there. No response. I know this isn't what you wanted. Still nothing. He stepped closer. I saw your memories. I held your hand. You saved me more times than I can count. So if I have to give you something now, it's this. He dropped the weapon. And opened his arms. Take me instead. For a second, just a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then her hand trembled. Her breath caught. The glow around her cracked, like a shell breaking. Rain, her voice, real again. Small. He smiled. I'm still here. She fell to her knees. The creature howled. It charged. Syra screamed, not in fear, but in defiance. Energy burst from her core in waves, golden and raw. But not wild. Controlled. Focused. She rose with the storm she created. And the ancient system responded. The ground split open. Pillars of obsidian rose from the earth. Symbols ignited across their surfaces. A hum filled the air, low, steady, ancient. A dome of light erupted around them. The beast hit the barrier and shattered into dust. Silence followed. Then the light faded. Syra collapsed. Rain caught her, barely. They sat there, in the ruin of power and silence. She was breathing. So was he. Sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to scare you. He laughed once, soft and shaken. You only look like a sun goddess about to vaporize the planet. I've had worse first dates. Her lips curled. Then the tears came. Silent, glowing, like the last of the storm. He held her tighter. They had survived the awakening. But something had changed. And they both knew it. The signal flared at dawn. A rescue ship. Real, this time. Not another Terran trap or ghost transmission. Its beacon pierced the haze of the jungle like a flare of memory, sharp, unexpected, impossible to ignore. Syra sensed it before Rain did. Her body stiffened. Her eyes, though dimmer now, still carried that lingering shimmer of power barely restrained. They climbed slowly to the ridge above the valley. The ship hovered in the distance, sleek and white against the rising sun, its engines whispering instead of roaring, as if afraid to disturb whatever ancient thing still slept beneath the trees. A figure waved from the open ramp. Human. Genuine. Rain exhaled. His shoulders sagged. They had made it. He looked at her. She didn't move. Syra. She shook her head barely. I can't. His gut sank. What do you mean? Her voice was calm. Sad. This place, it's part of me now. More than memory. More than blood. My body's tied to this land. If I leave, you die. She nodded. The ship's lights flashed again. Closer now. Waiting. Rain looked between her and the vessel. Between a way out, and the reason he'd survived any of this in the first place. You could have told me. I thought I could break it. I thought I could choose. He sat down beside her. The jungle around them buzzed quietly, almost peacefully. I didn't come here to bury someone I care about. She smiled. You didn't. You brought her back. They sat for a while, just breathing. Then he stood. Walked 5 paces toward the ridge. Then stopped. He didn't look back when he said it. I spent most of my life floating between jobs, units, systems. Always waiting for something to feel like home. This rock's tried to kill me every day since I got here, and I still found more truth in your silence than in every speech I've ever heard. She turned to him. Rain. He smiled. I'm not going. And just like that, the signal faded behind them. They used what tech was left to build a small station just enough to send warnings to nearby ships, pulses through the dark saying, stay away. Something ancient sleeps here. Something beautiful, too. They didn't speak of the end of the world anymore. They built a garden where the black sand met the roots of the forest. Syra's energy helped things grow faster, stranger. Colors Rain had never seen. Flowers that whispered if you listened just right. Sometimes, they danced. Clumsily, barefoot, to music neither of them remembered but somehow always knew. And sometimes, they just sat. Together. In silence. One morning, light broke through the clouds above the jungle. Real light. The first rays of unfiltered sun to reach this place in what must have been centuries. It hit the trees. The vines. The clearing. And them. She stood there, wrapped in mourning and silver. He stepped beside her, hand in hers. She leaned into him, eyes closed, whispering something only the forest could hear. And Rain just watched her glow. He didn't need to understand everything. He didn't need to fix it. He just needed to be here. With her. She wasn't human. And he wasn't the man who'd crashed here. But in that clearing, beneath the newborn sun, they were real. And that was enough. This video isn't for everyone. It's for those who have ever seen beauty where others saw a mistake. The airlock hissed open with a tired wheeze. Dallin Cole stepped off the rust-streaked freighter like a man exiled, dragging a dented duffel bag that thudded softly behind him. The docking bay of Varela Station smelled like scorched metal and poor decisions. Lights flickered above, casting shaky shadows across the cold floor. Silence clung to the place like old dust, too quiet for a station supposedly hosting 47 personnel. He paused. Waited. No greetings. No hustle of engineers or the casual buzz of COMM chatter. Just distant creaks and the occasional sigh of the walls as if the station itself resented being awake. Welcome to Varela, crackled a voice through the overhead speaker. Population, nobody who wants to be here? Dallin squinted up at the intercom. Charming. They'd sent him here after he accidentally rerouted his former captain's bathroom gravity controls. The report said insubordination. He preferred the term strategic protest. Still, Varela was a punishment post. Out of the way. Out of sight. Probably on the verge of falling apart. He shouldered his bag and walked the main corridor, stepping over a detached conduit that sparked weakly, like it had given up asking for help. The walls groaned around him, lights dimming in and out like a station trying to remember how to function. Then he heard it. A hum, high, glassy, delicate. Not mechanical. Not part of any maintenance system he knew. He followed the sound down a side corridor that curved into a narrow observatory dome. And stopped. She was standing there. Alone. A tall silhouette against the stars. Her cloak shimmered with muted hues, nebula dust caught in motion. Silver lavender hair fell in quiet waves over her back, shifting color as the dome's ambient light touched it. And her ears long, asymmetrical, one slightly curled like a broken crescent, the other sweeping back like it remembered flight. She wasn't wearing a uniform. Not human, that much was obvious. And yet, she didn't move. Didn't acknowledge him. Just stared into the stars, arms at her sides, still as the void itself. Dallin blinked, mouth half open. Hey. New guy. Just transferred. And, you're clearly not a vending machine. No response. Right. Smooth. He reached into his duffel and pulled out the least squished thing he had, a synth cheese sandwich, wrapped in faded plastic. He held it out like a peace offering to an ancient deity. Look, I have no idea what your dietary needs are, but this is marginally edible. Traded half my lunch credits for it, so you know. Historic value. Still, no movement. But she didn't leave. Progress? Dallin stepped forward slowly, keeping his tone light. You live here or just really committed to the view? Her head turned. Just slightly. Not fast. Not startled. Measured. Like someone who hadn't decided whether he was worth looking at yet. Her eyes were dark violet at the edges, but deep inside they glowed, faint and distant like dying stars. Dallin swallowed. You're not gonna vaporize me or something, are you? A blink. He exhaled. Okay. Cool. I can work with mysterious silence. Behind him, the walls groaned again. The lights above sputtered, then steadied. He glanced back. When he turned forward, she was closer. He hadn't heard her move. Not even a footstep. She stared at the sandwich in his hand like it had just insulted her ancestors. He chuckled nervously. Yeah, that's fair. This thing probably tastes like regret. Still, she didn't speak. But she didn't retreat, either. Her presence filled the room. Not loud. Not hostile. Just undeniable. Like gravity. Like sorrow. Later, when Dallin asked around, no one had answers. You're imagining things, one tech said, not meeting his eyes. Another muttered, Don't ask questions. It's safer. And one engineer, old, half-blind, only whispered, D-class anomaly. Faulted design. Should have been decommissioned. Dallin stopped asking after that. But he couldn't stop thinking about her. The way she stood still, alien, lost. Not like a monster. Not like a threat. More like someone waiting for a part of herself to return. The next day, he returned to the dome. No sandwich this time. Just himself, a mug of reheated synth coffee, and a question he wasn't sure how to ask. She was there. Same place. Same silence. He approached with a nod. Still not a vending machine. Just confirming. Her eyes shifted toward him. For the first time, she truly looked at him. He held the mug out. No cheese this time. Just bitterness and poor life choices. She tilted her head. Slightly. Then, for the first time, she spoke. Her voice was low. Measured. Like the wind before a storm. Ji kong esta sao, lo ing? Dallin blinked. Then smiled. No, he said softly. But I'm starting to think everyone else does. The lights in the observation dome had steadied, but the air still felt too still. The kind of silence that held questions with no safe answers. Kaiser didn't move. Not at first. She stood facing the starfield like she belonged more out there than in here, like gravity was the only thing keeping her from fading into the void. Dallin leaned against the cold railing beside her. Quiet. Not pushing. Not asking. Just letting the moment unfold. They say I betrayed them, Kaiser said finally. Her voice was almost a whisper. But I never raised a hand. Never spilled blood. He turned his head slightly. Yeah. She nodded once, slow and deliberate. I did nothing but exist. That was enough. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the console. He saw it, just a flicker of tension before she pulled her hand back under the folds of her cloak. They are called the Alary Dominion, she continued. To them, beauty is balance. Symmetry. Every feature measured, every proportion aligned. Any deviation is defect. Dallin gave a small snort. Well. Shit. Good thing I've never been symmetrical on a good day. She looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time, there was something in her eyes beyond distance, something like curiosity. My ears, she said simply, turning her head so both sides were visible. One ear curved inward like a delicate scroll. The other swept back, long and rigid. At birth, they called it a design flaw. Said it was a fault in a genetic pattern. He stared at them for a moment. Then shrugged. Looks fine to me. Kinda elegant, actually. Like you were sketched by an artist who was tired of straight lines. Kaiser's brow furrowed. She didn't answer immediately. They ran tests. Scans. Thought maybe it was a developmental error. Then they noticed other things. Emotional irregularities. Reactivity to music. Empathy spikes. Wait. Dallin frowned. You got kicked out for feeling stuff. They said I was unstable. He rolled his eyes. Yeah. Sounds about right. Gods forbid someone feel things in a sterile society full of cheekbone models. That earned him a sound. Not quite a laugh, but close a soft exhale, the kind that left a trace of warmth in the air. I was 11 when the reassignment order came, she said, quieter now. They didn't call it exile. Just redirection. I was moved to a research colony. Monitored. Studied. Isolated. Dallin rubbed a hand over the back of his neck. That's rough. They kept saying it was for my good. That imperfections led to instability. That eventually, I would understand. He nodded slowly. Yeah. They told me something like that once. After I reprogrammed the gravity in my captain's bathroom. Her head tilted slightly. Why? He smirked. Because he kept treating the junior crew like disposable screws. Figured if he couldn't shit without floating, he might rethink his attitude. Kazra stared at him. Then, slowly, barely, her lips curved. It wasn't much. Not a grin. Not yet. But it was there. The dome's lights hummed softly. Outside, a small comet streaked by, leaving a brief trail of silver across the void. Dallin followed it with his eyes. I miss it sometimes, she said. He looked at her. The Dominion? No, she shook her head. Before I knew what they expected me to be. When I thought I belonged. Dallin leaned back against the rail. What did it smell like? She blinked. What? Your world. The air. The ground. Childhood stuff. That sort of thing. She closed her eyes, breathing in something that wasn't there anymore. Charged air. Like a storm was always coming. The cities floated on magnetic plates, so the ground hummed under your feet. There were flowers, glass flowers. They bloomed once a year. Sharp edges, but beautiful. You could never pick them without bleeding. Beautiful and dangerous, he murmured. Fits. She opened her eyes. And you? He smiled faintly. Smelled like rust and festival sugar. Sea salt, burnt wiring, fried protein. Also the neighbor's weird perfume tree that made me sneeze every damn spring. She laughed. This time, real. Soft, but real. He blinked, surprised. That's cheating. You're not allowed to have a nice laugh after all that mystery built up. She looked at him, head tilted. You're strange. Yeah. But I'm not symmetrical. So technically, I'm safe from your people. Kazra turned back to the stars, her posture more relaxed now. I used to think, she whispered, that the stars whispered to those who were broken. That they offered places beyond symmetry. Beyond judgment. Dallin sipped from his cup. Maybe that's where we are now. Maybe. They stood in silence. A good silence. Not empty. Just enough. And for the first time since she was cast out, Kazra let herself smile into the dark. The message arrived in a broken pulse. Just a flicker on the terminal in hydroponics. A low-frequency ping that shouldn't have meant anything. But Kazra stopped moving the moment it hit. Her back went rigid. Her long ears twitched once, and the light in her violet eyes dimmed. Dallin was crouched nearby, replacing a cracked nutrient valve. He didn't notice the signal, just the silence that followed. When he looked up, she was staring at the wall like it had said something unforgivable. "You okay?" he asked. She didn't answer. "Not immediately." "Repeat transmission," she said quietly. The console obeyed. The same broken code blinked across the screen. Alary military frequency. Encoded. Real. Dallin stood. That looked official. "They found me," Kazra said. No emotion in her voice. Just fact. Just gravity. He blinked. Wait, who's they?" She turned slowly, the folds of her cloak catching light like oil over metal. "The Dominion. They know I'm alive." Dallin muttered a soft curse. "How?" "I don't know. Maybe the station's beacon. Maybe I was careless. Maybe they were always listening." She moved away from the console like it burned. Her fingers curled tight around her sleeve. "Hey," Dallin said, stepping in front of her. "Breathe." She looked at him. Her composure cracked, just slightly. "You don't understand," she said. "They won't take me to trial. There's no trial. Just recalibration." His brow furrowed. "Like therapy recalibration?" "No," her voice dropped, dark and low. "Memory slicing. Emotional nullification. They reset you until you no longer question the shape they put you in." He stared at her. "Jesus." Kazra turned away. Her shoulders were rigid, barely trembling. "To them, I'm not broken. I'm defective. That means I can be corrected. Repurposed. Assimilated. Not on my watch." She looked back, eyes narrowing. "You think you can stop them?" He didn't answer. Not directly. Just walked over to the wall panel, popped it open, and started yanking out cables. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Manual relay override. I'm gonna reroute the station's signature. Scramble our location. Make Morello look like an abandoned mining buoy with a bad attitude. You'll get court-martialed. Wouldn't be the first time. And technically, I was on probation anyway." She blinked, a faint flicker of confusion crossing her features. He didn't stop working. Fingers moved fast, purposeful. "Listen, I didn't come out to this rust bucket to die fixing leaky pipes. And I sure as hell didn't come to stand by while someone I care about gets rewritten like a faulty manual." A long silence stretched between them. "You care?" she asked, barely audible. He glanced at her. "You think I sit around talking star metaphors and swiping nutrient packs from the kitchen for just anyone?" The ghost of a smile touched her lips. Faint. Fragile. But it was there. He paused, flicked a final switch, and the panel buzzed to life. The beacon pulse shifted a soft electronic sigh like the station had just changed its mind about being found. "There," he said. "We're ghosts." Kazra exhaled, but it didn't sound relieved. Just quieter. They'll send someone. They always do. Dallin nodded. Let them. Later that night, while the dome lights flickered in lazy patterns overhead, Kazra sat with her knees pulled in, back to the cold railing. Dallin brought 2 mugs of hot synth brew and sat beside her. No words passed for a long while. Then she whispered, "I used to dream of silence. Not anymore. Now I know what it really means." He nodded. "It's heavier than it looks." The stars drifted silently beyond the dome. The next morning, the warning came in a different voice. Station sensors flickered to red. The alert was subdued, almost embarrassed, as if the system itself knew it was too late. 3 Alloy ships dropped into a local orbit. Not sleek scout ships. Not diplomatic cruisers. These were interceptors. Obsidian black. Geometric hulls shaped like razors. No insignia. No lights. Just intent. The docking clamps activated with a hiss like breath held too long. The ground vibrated. Lights dimmed. Systems stalled. Kazra stood by the dome, silent, still. Her face unreadable. Dallin stared at the terminal readouts, then slowly pulled on his patchwork coat. "Well," he said. "Looks like we've got company." Kazra didn't move. "They're not here to talk, are they?" he asked. She shook her head. "No." He reached for the old plasma wrench on a nearby bench. Held it like a club. "Then I guess I'll just have to be extremely unfriendly." She turned, finally meeting his eyes. "You'll die if you fight them." He smirked. "Hell, I might die anyway. But I'd rather go out ruining their symmetry." Her jaw tightened. "You should leave." "No. Dallin. You're not going back to them," he said firmly. "Not while I'm breathing. They don't get to erase you." The ship groaned again as the boarding tunnel extended. Kazra whispered, almost too soft to hear, "Thank you." He didn't respond. Just stood beside her, waiting for the storm to break. The storm didn't knock. The airlock split open with a mechanical scream, and 3 Alloy enforcers stepped through the breach like sculpted obsidian statues. Tall. Angular. Faces hidden behind reflective helms shaped into perfect ovals. Armor patterned with fractal symmetry, glowing faint blue with motion tracking nodes. Dallin stood in the center of the corridor, plasma wrench in one hand, and adrenaline pounding in his ears. He glanced sideways. Kazra stepped forward without a word. She removed her cloak. The fabric slid from her shoulders like fog peeling from a blade. Beneath it was armor silver plates layered with asymmetrical precision, pulsing gently with embedded energy veins. And from her back unfolded 2 wings. Not feathered. Not solid. But filaments of light, twisting and unbalanced. One longer than the other. Both alive. She stood straight. Tall. The room suddenly too small for what she had become. Dallin couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Kazra's voice was calm. "If they fear imperfection, then today, let them face it." The lead Alloy raised a compression lance. "Aberration 7. Stand down and submit to recalibration." She didn't. She moved. One moment she was still. The next, a blur of light and motion. Her wings sliced the air, scattering faint afterimages. She spun under the lance's arc, struck low, and drove her armored elbow into the enforcer's ribs. His suit sparked and folded inward. The other two reacted fast, moving with synchronized precision. Too precise. Too slow for chaos. Kezro wasn't fighting like a soldier. She was dancing. Her every strike curved where logic would go straight. Every dodge bent just out of rhythm, throwing off their predictive targeting. A ballet of rebellion. Of defiance. Of asymmetry turned into power. One enforcer raised a pulse cannon. Dallin saw the charge build. He hurled a metal crate. It didn't do much. Then he sprinted to the side panel, slapped open the controls, and began overriding the corridor's pressure locks. "Don't get fancy," he muttered. "Just get unpredictable." Kezra caught a bat and strike with her forearm and used the force to spin upward, kicking the helm off one attacker. The Allery stumbled. She drove a pulse shock into his chest. Dallin finished the override, then ducked just in time to avoid a blast of shrapnel as a ceiling vent exploded behind him. "Okay," he gasped. "New rule. No more ventilation tricks." One of the Allery advanced toward him. Dallin backed up, reached behind the workbench, grabbed the nearest object. A rusted, short-handled plasma welder. "Really?" he muttered. "This again?" The enforcer swung. Dallin ducked, moved in close, and slammed the plasma welder into the side of the helmet with a burst of sparks. The Allery staggered, systems glitching. One more swing and the mask cracked open with a hiss of steam. Kezro landed beside him. She stared down at the fallen soldier. Then at Dallin. "You just struck a Dominion Knight," she said, "with a tool used to remove panel screws." He shrugged, catching his breath. "I call it disruptive artistry." She blinked, then laughed. A sharp, surprised sound. Wild and alive. Behind them, the last Allery regained footing. Kezra spun and launched a kinetic disc from her gauntlet. It slammed into his chest, throwing him backward through the broken airlock. Dallin grabbed her hand. "Come on. This place is about to go to hell." They ran. Through the flickering corridors of Varela Station. Past leaking pipes, blinking terminals, and dead doors. Dallin keyed open a hangar bay door. Inside, a derelict freighter held together by weld patches and spite. Kezra frowned. "That thing flies. It argues about it, but yeah." They bolted inside. Kezra jumped into the pilot's seat without hesitation. Dallin dropped into the co-pilot's chair, flipping random switches. "Engines?" she asked. "Hopefully." The ship groaned, choked, and then roared awake. Outside, more Allery were landing. Reinforcements. Heavy armor. Full recalibration squad. "Launch now," Dallin barked. Kezra didn't wait. The freighter tore free of the bay just as a compression lance burst through the docking frame. The ship bucked sideways but stayed intact. From space, Varela Station looked like a wounded beast. Then it exploded. The pressure ripple spread outward, catching the rear shield of their freighter. The ship shook violently, alarms screaming, lights flickering. Dallin gritted his teeth. "We still flying?" Kazer's hands danced across the controls. "Barely. But yes." He leaned back, closed his eyes, let the adrenaline bleed off. Silence, except for the hum of broken systems and her steady breathing beside him. After a long pause, he cracked one eye open. "Hey," he said. "For the record, that was the coolest thing I've ever seen." Kazer didn't look over, but her lips curved just a little. "Imperfection," she said softly, "has its uses." And for the first time in her life, she didn't whisper it like an apology. She said it like truth. The ship drifted through the silence, half broken, half alive. Lights flickered across the console in uncertain rhythm. The NAV system wheezed when touched. The left thruster coughed every few minutes like it had something to prove and a lot to forget. Dallin Cole sat in the co-pilot's seat, one boot propped up, hands resting behind his head. His jacket was singed. His ribs ached. His knuckles were still bruised from the last swing. Kazer stood at the viewport, wrapped in a faded maintenance blanket, silver lavender hair pulled loosely to one side. Her armor was half removed, fractured, dented, but still clinging to her frame like old loyalty. Neither of them said anything for a while. They'd passed 3 patrol zones without pinging a scanner. Dallin had rerouted the transponder to mimic a garbage hauler from a defunct moon colony. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. The stars rolled past like distant thoughts. Kazer finally spoke. "You should sleep." Dallin shrugged. "I will when the ship stops sounding like it's having an existential crisis." She almost smiled. "Almost." He sat forward, adjusting a loose panel. "We're out of rations in 3 days. Water in 5 if we don't reroute the filtration coils. We'll find something." "I admire your optimism." She turned from the window, her violet eyes softer now. "You don't run from silence the way you used to." He met her gaze. "Maybe I found something in it." A pause. Then she stepped closer. The hum of the ship faded beneath her footsteps. Dallin didn't move as she reached out slow, uncertain, and touched his face. Her fingers traced the edge of his cheekbone, down to the scar on his jaw. Gentle. Tentative. Like she was expecting him to flinch. He didn't. Her voice was quiet. "No one's ever touched me without fear." His hand rose, slow and deliberate, and mirrored hers. He brushed her hair back behind her ear, the symmetrical one, the one her people had declared an error. "You're not a mistake," he said. She closed her eyes. Just for a moment. Then opened them again. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you see beauty in something they call broken?" Dallin let out a breath. "Because you exist," he said. "Not the way they want you to, but the way you are. That's what makes it beautiful." Kazer stared at him like she was seeing something she didn't know how to name. Then she looked away, back to the stars. They passed a debris ring, fragments of a dead station caught in slow orbit around nothing. Dallin adjusted the ship's course. Barely. Just enough to avoid the largest clusters. The silence returned, but now it was easier. Companionable. He handed her the last protein bar without a word. She took it, broke it in half, and handed a piece back. They didn't talk about it. Didn't need to. Time stretched in the way only space allows. Hours bled into each other. Sensors pinged static. Engines rumbled, then purred, then rattled again. Kazra sat beside him eventually, her blanket pulled around her like a second skin. Her eyes were half closed, but not asleep. "Where do we go now?" she asked. He looked out the viewport. "Anywhere they can reach." She was quiet. "Then, everywhere feels like a place they've touched. Then we find one they haven't." The NAV system beeped faintly. A field of light appeared on the map, uncharted, unclaimed. A sector no one had labeled. Just stars, scattered in a loose spiral, unnamed and drifting. Kazra leaned forward. "That's not on any Dominion registry." He smiled. "Perfect." They watched the stars grow closer. Outside the viewport, the spiral drifted pale gold and dusky blue, wrapped around a quiet cluster of suns. No gates. No satellites. Just space the way it was before someone claimed it. She stood. He followed. They both moved to the front panel, side by side, watching the stars pass beneath the ship like waves. Kazra rested a hand on the glass. "Untouched," she said. Dallin nodded. "Still yours if you want it." She glanced at him. "What do we call it?" He didn't hesitate. "Your name." Her eyes widened. Just a little. Then she turned back to the galaxy unfolding in front of them. And smiled. Real. Whole. Like someone who, for the first time, wasn't being watched, but seen. "They said it would be a simple medical evaluation, but no one warned me I'd have to spread my legs in front of two human males. I remember the lights first. Cool, sterile, humming from the ceiling panels like an artificial breeze. The medical bay of Argos 9 was surprisingly modest for a human-built interstellar station. Clean, efficient, but modest. No crystal conduits, no bioluminescent tiles. Just metal and glass and a faint smell of citrus sterilizers. "Welcome to Argos 9, one of them said. Dr. Cole Reyes. He was the quiet one. Tall, with warm brown eyes and a voice that could probably lull a dying star to sleep. When he extended his hand to greet me, I hesitated. Contact rituals differ between species, but I accepted it anyway. His grip was firm, professional. Reassuring, almost. Then came the other one. "And I'm Dr. Jace Andar," he said, grinning like the airlock just popped open and let the chaos in. He wore his uniform slightly unzipped, goggles perched on his head like he'd just stepped out of a plasma storm. One of his eyes shimmered silver cybernetic. The other sparkled green, curious, and entirely too amused. Two males. Human. And me. I had been briefed, of course. The Elendari Emissary Code required a full physical evaluation before participation in any diplomatic activity. What it didn't say was that humans unlike my own kind conducted such evaluations with such directness. The first half was tolerable. neural scans, reflex tests, a few strange pokes with instruments that beeped in colorful confusion. I answered their questions. I even laughed, politely, at one of Jace's poorly translated jokes. Then came the chair. Cole was the one who said it. Calm. Professional. Now, if you could please lie back and place your feet here, we'll begin the reproductive system assessment. I blinked. You wish to examine my fertility cycle? He nodded, adjusting a scanner. Standard protocol. Nothing invasive, just positioning for better alignment. Positioning. I echoed. Jace added helpfully, yeah, just swing your legs up into the stirrups. Don't worry, we've done this 100 times. That's when I froze. My entire species' reproductive customs, my caste training, my ancestors' expectations, all of them screamed in horror. I stood up. Hard. The examination chair squealed behind me as I pushed away from it like it was on fire. I looked from one man to the other, betrayal boiling beneath my skin. You intend to look upon my inner sanctum? Together. Cole blinked. Jace nearly choked. You're, what now? Jace coughed, trying not to laugh. On Elindar, I snapped, only one bonded soul may witness such things. The opening of the legs is sacred, it signifies a commitment. You cannot ask this of me. Not unless. I paused, horror struck. Are you proposing? Both of you. Cole turned a deeper shade of pink than I thought human skin could manage. No. No, no, no goddess, no. It's not like that, he stammered, hands raised. Jace, unfortunately, found this far too entertaining. He leaned against the scanner table, biting back laughter, his cybernetic eye pulsing erratically. Well, I mean, if you're asking. Jace, Cole snapped. Right, sorry, he said, still grinning. Very professional. Medical only. I narrowed my eyes at them, heart racing, breath uneven. On my world, this would be cause for ritual reprimand. Possibly exile. Definitely years of therapy. This exam is a violation, I said slowly. I was not informed that I would be asked to expose my reproductive systems to strangers. Let alone, male ones. Cole took a deep breath. You're right. I should have consulted the cross-cultural index. I didn't mean to offend you, Ambassador Vera. Serially, I corrected, still wary. He nodded. Serially. There was a pause. The silence grew thick. Then, softly, Cole said, we do have non-invasive bioscanners. It won't give us every detail, but it's enough to clear you for station activity. Would that be acceptable? I exhaled. Yes. That would be preferable. Behind him, Jace whispered, she really thought we were both proposing. Stars above. I did not laugh. Not then. But I may have smiled. Just a little. The bioscanner hummed softly, a delicate thrum that almost matched the pulse in my temples. Dr. Reyes stood beside the console, his fingers dancing across a holographic interface. His demeanor had shifted, no longer the strictly professional silence, but something gentler. Quieter. as if he were navigating not just my biology, but my trust. "We'll begin with a general scan," he said, glancing at me. His voice was calm again. That human softness, it unnerved me more than the machines. I nodded, settling onto the scanning table. This time, there was no strange chair. No stirrups. Just a softly glowing surface beneath me in a dome of light that slowly passed from my toes to my brow. "Vitals are strong," he murmured, eyes flicking across the data stream. "No anomalies in circulatory or neural systems." He trailed off. My eyes snapped to him. "What is it?" He hesitated, then offered a small smile. "Just fascinating. Your biofield symmetry is unlike anything in the Confederation archives. Almost fractal in complexity." I blinked. "Is that good?" Jace, lounging on a nearby stool with his arms crossed, chimed in. "If your scans were a painting, you'd be hanging in a museum with security drones guarding the frame." Cole shot him a look. Jace shrugged. "What?" "It's true." I tilted my head. "Is that a courtship phrase?" Jace choked. Cole blinked. "Not," Cole began. "It can be," Jace said with a grin. "Depends how it's received." I considered this. "So when you say I should be guarded in a museum, you are expressing desire for bonding?" "Oh stars," Jace muttered, rubbing his forehead. "Look, I'm just saying you're impressive. That's all." Cole cleared his throat. "Let's stay focused. Scan is nearly complete." I noticed how his hand hovered just a little too long over the projection, as if reluctant to move to the next section. His eyes lingered on the scan longer than necessary. "Dr. Reyes," I said quietly, "are you also expressing courtship in your own way?" His gaze snapped to mine, startled. "No, I mean, of course not. That's not. This is strictly medical." But his ears had turned a suspicious shade of red. "Ah," I said, keeping my expression neutral. "So the flaring of the cheeks is not a sign of mating interest either?" Jace snorted. "Cole, you're turning so red." "Focus, Jace," Cole muttered. The scan concluded with a gentle chime. Cole stepped back, reviewing the data. "You're in excellent health. Even by elementary standards." I asked. "Even by ours," he said, then cleared his throat. "We'll submit the report. You're officially cleared for diplomatic activity." "Then we are done here? Unless you have questions or need clarification." Jace leaned forward, resting his chin on one hand. "Actually, I have a question. Do Elendari always assume compliments mean someone's proposing?" "Not always," I said. "Only when offered by two males in close proximity during a reproductive evaluation." Jace cracked up. Cole did not. I slipped off the scanning table. The air felt lighter. I wasn't sure if it was relief or confusion. "Thank you, Dr. Reyes. Dr. Andar. I appreciate your patience." Cole nodded, still avoiding my eyes. Jace winked. "Anytime, Ambassador." As I stepped out of the medical bay, I caught a glimpse of Cole watching me go. It wasn't professional. and I didn't mind. 3 days later, I returned to the medical bay. Voluntarily. I told myself it was for a follow-up. That it was only prudent to ensure all systems remained stable after the initial bioscan. I might have even muttered something about recalibration thresholds and atmospheric variations as I stood outside the sliding doors, pretending not to hesitate. They opened with a sigh. Cole was already inside, reviewing something on his tablet. He looked up, startled, then stood a little too fast. Ambassador Vera. I wasn't expecting. Serially, I corrected, stepping in. This is a personal check-in. His brow furrowed slightly, but he nodded. Of course. Is something wrong? No, I simply wish to confirm the bioscanner's results. For accuracy. Of course, he said again, calmer now. His voice dropped to that low, steady hum that reminded me of nebulous storms, quiet, powerful, and always a little dangerous. Before I could speak further, Jace swung into the room like he'd been waiting behind the wall. Serially. Back for round 2? I knew you missed us. He was chewing on something, probably human candy, and his goggles were perched on his head like usual, tilted at a rakish angle that made him look half technician, half mischief incarnate. There are no rounds, I said, narrowing my eyes. That's what they all say, he winked. Cole made a noise in his throat that might have been disapproval. Or jealousy. I climbed onto the scanner bed without waiting for instruction. Jace leaned on the wall across from me. You know, if this were elendary courtship, I think we're already halfway bonded. Jace, Cole warned. What? I'm being culturally sensitive. Cole turned to me. Would you prefer I conduct the scan privately? I considered that. Then, perhaps out of curiosity or the desire to observe them both, I shook my head. Proceed as before? Cole began activating the scanner. The soft dome of light returned, brushing along my frame like a second skin. It hummed a gentle tone that almost soothed the tension in the room. Your biofield remains unchanged, he said, focused. Perfectly balanced. That's very elendary of her, Jace offered. Always symmetrical. Always stunning. You are complimentary again, I noted. And you haven't run screaming, he replied. I take that as progress. Cole tapped the control a little harder than necessary. I noticed it. The scan finished its first pass. Cole looked at me longer than he needed to. Something else, Dr. Reyes. He blinked. No. It's just rare to see patterns like yours. It's beautiful. In a mathematical sense. I tilted my head. You find math beautiful? He hesitated. Sometimes. Especially when it surprises me. Jace let out a long breath. Man, you're making the rest of us look bad. Cole ignored him. Or tried to. You both act unusually today, I said. Is this what human competition for mating looks like? Jace burst out laughing. Cole choked on air. It was a sincere question, I added. Jace wiped a tear from his eye. Oh stars, Cyrilly. Please never stop talking. Cole stepped back from the scanner. You're clear. Again. But if you'd like to return anytime, for curiosity, or comfort, or conversation, the lab is always open. His voice cracked just slightly at the end. I slid down from the scanner, pausing between them. One quiet and intense. The other loud and charming. Both utterly confusing. I believe I will return, I said. Jace raised an eyebrow. For who? I looked at them both. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled without needing to suppress it. I haven't decided yet. Then I left. Slowly. Letting them wonder. The lights in the lab were low that evening, casting quiet shadows across the polished surfaces. Most of the station had gone into standby. Cole Reyes hadn't. He stood near the back wall, tapping notes into a floating display, but I knew he wasn't really working. His focus wavered every time I moved. I could feel it, even in the silence between us. I stepped closer. You wish to speak privately, I said. He looked up, startled. Then his voice softened. Yes. Thank you for coming. I waited. Let him begin. I've been thinking about what you said the last time, he continued. About courtship. About bonding rituals. I realized. I don't really understand what it means for someone from Elindar. My fingers brushed the edge of the counter. Smooth. Cold. On Elindar, connection is sacred. Controlled. Regulated by caste and ritual. We are taught that physical closeness must be earned through years of compatibility testing, dream sharing, and spiritual alignment. Cole blinked slowly. So no dancing, no kissing, no casual hand-holding. I gave him a look. Touch, in public, is reserved for spiritual resonance ceremonies. Kissing, as you call it, is part of the union rite. Once performed, it cannot be undone. He blinked again. So, you've never? No, I said simply. The silence between us swelled again. But it wasn't awkward. It was weighty. Reverent. You said emotions are also discouraged, he asked quietly. I nodded. To feel is considered a distraction. Logic and clarity are our ideals. Expressing affection freely, as humans do, would be seen as a loss of composure. An indulgence. He leaned back against the table, arms folded, thoughtful. And do you believe that? I paused. Looked at him longer than I needed to. I used to. There was something about Cole. The way he listened without interrupting. The way he didn't rush to fill silence with words. His presence made me want to say more than I intended. My caste specializes in analysis. Data. Observation. But when I observed humans, I saw a different kind of strength. You wear your hearts on your sleeves. You take risks. You love without knowing if it will be returned. Cole's smile was faint but warm. We mess up a lot too. Yes, I said. But sometimes, you feel more alive than we do. He looked at me, and for a moment I couldn't look away. Then the door slid open. Jace. Interrupting, he asked, already knowing the answer. Cole stepped aside, the moment between us retreating like a tide. Not at all, I said. Jace grinned and held up a small glowing disc. Good. Because I come bearing invitations. There's a crew gathering tonight in the observation lounge. Music. Food. Questionable dancing. I figured, why not show our favorite ambassador what human joy looks like in the wild? Cole raised an eyebrow. Are you sure that's appropriate? I didn't say formal, Jace replied. I said fun. He turned to me, holding out the disc. Come with us. You've studied our biology. Time to study our chaos. I took the invitation and held it like it might dissolve in my hand. Is this part of a courtship ritual? I asked. Jace laughed. Not unless you want it to be. This is just us being human. I looked between the two of them. Cole's gaze was unreadable. Jace's sparkled with mischief. Something inside me stirred. Not logic. Not ritual. Something less structured. More curious. I will attend, I said. Later that evening, I stood at the edge of the observation lounge, surrounded by music and laughter and motion. Humans moved in ways that defied symmetry. They touched freely. Danced in clusters. Their energy pulsed like stars. Jace was already in the center of it all, twirling a technician while holding a drink in one hand. He spotted me and waved dramatically. She came. A small cheer went up. I blinked. Cole was at the far side of the room, watching too. He offered a nod. Subtle. Protective. Jace approached, offering his hand. Care to try? I hesitated. This resembles a pre-bonding ritual. He smiled. I'll be gentle. I let him lead me into the movement. The rhythm was strange, unpredictable. My steps faltered, but Jace didn't laugh. He adapted. Guided. We spun once. And then I caught Cole's eyes across the room. He wasn't smiling. Not because he disapproved. Because he was feeling something. Something he wasn't saying. And so was I. The alarm came in the middle of the night cycle. Not the blaring kind that signaled fire or hull breach. No, this one was silent. Subtle. A blinking red icon on the medbay's main console. Unauthorized access detected. Cole was the first to see it. He'd stayed late again claiming paperwork, but really just trying to make sense of the confusion growing behind his eyes. When the icon pulsed, he froze. Then his fingers flew. System logs, he muttered, pulling up encrypted entry points. One name lit up on the screen like a flare in deep space, Cyril Vera. More specifically her genetic scan data. The files weren't just accessed. They were being copied. In real time. No, no, no. He slapped the override, locking out the transfer. A split-second delay, but the damage was done. Whoever had breached the system already had partial access. Jace arrived moments later, shirt wrinkled, expression tight. You saw it too? Cole nodded grimly. Someone went after Cyril's records. They didn't go for general crew files. Just hers. Jace's face darkened. That's not a coincidence. Cole hesitated. There's something else. It was routed through a diplomatic node. Someone masked it to look like a regular request from the Confederation archive. Clever bastards, Jace muttered. You think it's local? No idea. The door slid open behind them. Cyrilie. She wore a loose overrobe, clearly roused from her quarters. Her eyes glowed brighter than usual, alert, scanning. I received an emergency ping on my internal channel. Why? She stopped. Her gaze fell on the screen. On the blinking file tag labeled Genetic Bio Profile, Illindari _Ambassador _Cyrilie _Vera. Her hands trembled. That data is restricted. Locked under spiritual protocol. Someone breached it, Cole said gently. We stopped the full transfer, but... She stepped back. Like the console had turned to fire. You do not understand, she whispered. That file contains information about my reproductive viability. To access it without consent is considered. Her breath hitched. It is equivalent to spiritual violation. It means I have been opened. To all eyes. Without meaning. Jace moved toward her. We're going to fix this. You cannot unsee what has been taken. Cole stood still. Cyrilie, we'll track the breach. We'll scrub the servers. We'll find out who did it. I promise. She looked between them, struggling to contain what must have felt like her whole world unraveling. Do you think this is coincidence? She asked. There are factions on Illindar and Earth who resent our alliance. They would use this to shame me. To discredit everything I've done. Jace nodded. We've suspected sabotage before. But this is personal. The medbay fell into tense silence. We need to find the source, Cole said. Now. The two men moved like they had done this 100 times before. Cole at the console, Jace patching in external feeds, decrypting data trails, cross-checking timestamps. But under the surface, pressure built. Why didn't you encrypt the scans tighter? Jace snapped suddenly. You knew she was a diplomatic target. It was under triple-layer lockdown, Cole shot back. No system is unbreachable. You think I wanted this? I think you've been distracted, Jace growled. You stare at her like you're already soul-bound. And you don't? Cole barked. The console beeped ping, finding a match on the breach address. They both ignored it. You flirt like it's your job, Cole said. You think this is a game? She trusted us. And you think she's yours? Jace fired back. We're not in some noble mating duel, Cole. This is real. Cyrilie's voice cut through the rising tension. Enough. Both men froze. She stood between them now, composed but trembling. This is not about your rivalry. This is about my dignity. My safety. If you cannot work together to restore what was taken from me, then step aside. Her tone wasn't raised, but it echoed like thunder. For a beat, no one moved. Then Cole turned back to the screen. The breach originated from relay node 7C. It's one of ours, but the signal was bounced through a ghost terminal. I can trace it back, Jace said quietly. Give me 10 minutes. You have 5, Cyrilie replied. They got to work. Side by side. Silent. Focused. Angry. Protective. And beneath it all something neither of them dared say out loud. Yet. The next morning, Cyrilie stood in the docking bay with a daytop hat in hand. Her request for reassignment had already been processed. Efficiency was a point of pride among Elendari diplomats, especially when it came to undoing complications. Cole found her first. He didn't say anything at first. Just stood beside her, watching the shuttles being loaded across the bay. She didn't look at him. I read your request, he finally said. I assumed you would, she replied. I didn't approve it. That got her attention. She turned to him, surprised. You overruled a diplomatic transfer? No, Cole said calmly. I delayed it. She exhaled sharply. You shouldn't have. My presence here only complicates your work. And your feelings. He looked at her, really looked at her, and she felt the weight of it settle around them like gravity. You think leaving will simplify anything? That this just disappears because you do. I know what my culture expects of me, she said. One bond. One direction. Not this. Cole's voice was quieter now. Then maybe your culture needs to catch up. Jace arrived a moment later, a bag slung over his shoulder. You weren't going to say goodbye? Cyrilie stiffened. I didn't think it would be appropriate. Jace gave a crooked smile that didn't reach his eyes. Right. Because everything about this has been so appropriate. She looked between them. 2 humans. 2 hearts. 2 paths she wasn't allowed to walk at once. On Elendar, this would be enough to shame my caste, she said. 2 suitors. Emotional conflict. A compromised data file that speaks of fertility. It's everything we are trained to avoid. Cole stepped forward. Cyrilie. No, she held up a hand. Let me finish. I know I've made this harder for both of you. But I cannot pretend I don't feel something. For both of you. That would be dishonest. Jace rubbed the back of his neck. Well. That's kind of mutual. Cole looked at her, voice steady. I don't care about Elendar's rights or bonding laws. I don't care about what your ancestors whispered into your training. I just want to understand you. Jace said nothing. But he didn't leave either. His eyes held something deeper. Something unspoken, but present. Cyrilie felt something shift inside her. Not clarity, exactly. But something close to acceptance. I do not know what this is, she said. But I know that it is real. And that I am not ready to abandon it yet. Cole exhaled. Jace blinked. She turned back toward the shuttle. Then closed the data pad. Delay the transfer, she said. Indefinitely. Cole smiled. Jace raised his eyebrows. Guess we better figure out how to navigate this triangle without imploding. Cyrilie looked at both of them. If you think I am complicated now, Wait until I start asking real questions. They laughed. And in that laughter, something fragile and beautiful began to grow. It started during a routine bio-calibration. Cyrilie had returned for what was supposed to be a standard follow-up. Her vitals had been stable. Neural feedback smooth. Hormone levels, mostly predictable. Until they weren't. The scanner beeped once. Then again. Cole frowned. Jace looked up from the console, chewing the end of a stylus. That's not normal, is it? Cole didn't answer immediately. He ran the data twice. Then manually cross-checked against the elementary compatibility charts Cyrilie had shared weeks ago. His voice came low, almost stunned. She's sinking. Jace blinked. Like, sinking. Hormonal resonance. It's a bonding indicator in elementary physiology. Cyrilie sat up slowly. That is, not possible. Cole turned the display toward her. Two distinct resonance spikes. Two frequency signatures. Both human. Both present. It appears, he said carefully, you've formed a biolink. With both of us. Silence. Then a very human curse from Jace. Stars above. Cyrilie stared at the screen. This must be an error. I've triple-checked, Cole said. It's not. She stood, pacing. Her robe flared behind her like storm clouds in motion. That is biologically incompatible. Elementary cannot form dual bonds. Our system selects one match only. It's the cornerstone of our reproductive protocol. Then maybe something's changed, Jace said. She stopped. What do you mean? You said yourself our cultures are evolving. Maybe this isn't an error. Maybe it's a mutation. An adaptation. Cole added, a sign of cross-species compatibility. A potential evolutionary leap. Cyrilie looked between them. Her voice came small. Or a scandal. The message from Elindar came hours later. Not a conversation. Not a request. A summons. The council demanded her return. Her case would be studied. Reviewed. Contained. When she read the message, her hands trembled. Cole was the first to speak. You don't have to go. They will come for me if I do not. Then we'll stand in the way. Jace stepped forward. You're not a specimen. You're not some genetic experiment they get to dissect. You're not theirs, Cole said. You're you. And you get to choose. Cyrilie looked at them. Her expression fractured half fear, half defiance. I did not ask for this. No, Cole said gently. But maybe it asked for you? Jace's voice was quieter. And maybe it chose the right person? Her eyes shimmered. Not glowing. Just wet. She nodded. Not in agreement. In resolve. This connection unintended, unprecedented was no accident. It was a beginning. The council chamber was as silent as it was sterile. Clean lines. Cool light. Faces projected on hollow panels like judges from a distant constellation. Representatives from Elindar. The Interstellar Confederation. A few station commanders pretending not to fidget. Sara stood alone in the center of the room. Except she wasn't alone. Cole and Jace were both present, seated to either side of the room. Not allowed to speak. Not allowed to interfere. But they were there. She could feel their eyes on her. A voice from the Elendary panel broke the quiet. Ambassador Vera. We request confirmation. You have undergone a dual hormonal biolink. Yes, Sara interrupted. Murmurs followed. With 2 human males, the voice finished, almost bitterly. Yes, she said again. You understand the cultural implications of this, another asked. I do. A pause. Then the oldest panelist spoke. And do you submit yourself for retrieval and containment under Code 43D? Sara let the silence breathe. Then shook her head. No, I decline. A few gasps. Cole sat straighter. Jace mouthed something she couldn't quite see. She lifted her chin. I am not broken. I am not dangerous. I am not an anomaly to be studied under glass. What has happened is unexpected, yes, but not unnatural. One of the Confederation envoys cleared his throat. Ambassador, if you refuse retrieval, Elendar may. I will remain at Argos 9, Sara said clearly. And continue my work here. I will continue to collaborate with both Doctors Reyes and Andar. This isn't just collaboration, someone muttered. She smiled faintly. Perhaps not. The Elendary panel flickered for a moment. Then the voice returned. Then you do so without the backing of your caste. So be it, Sara replied. Perhaps it is time our caste stopped deciding who we are? She turned without waiting for dismissal. Walked out. And when she did, both Cole and Jace stood to follow. Later, as the artificial sunset filtered through the viewing deck windows, the 3 of them sat together in silence. No documents. No reports. No protocols. Just stars. Cole leaned back, arms crossed behind his head. So. We're officially controversial now. I always was, Jace said. You're just catching up. Sara smiled, arms resting on her knees. There is still so much I don't understand about human emotion, she said. That's the fun part, Cole replied. Jace tilted his head. Think you're ready to scan us for a change? She turned to him slowly, violet eyes gleaming. I believe I will. She let the silence stretch again. Then added deadpan. And this time, I'll ask you to open your legs. Jace choked on his drink. Cole laughed. Sara just sat back and watched the stars. Not broken. Not studied. Just becoming something new.